What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. It is a Monday afternoon, which means we are releasing the grades from all the Sunday games that you guys saw from yesterday's action. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That's Dalton Wasserman. Dalton, is it just a narcissistic shirt, or are you going with something else here?
No,
you just a big fan of you, or what's going on with the shirt?
It is that too. It's a little bit of everything you're asking, absolutely. Okay. But no, I mean, listen, had to rep Andy Dalton after the game he had yesterday.
Hell yeah,
right?
I love it.
This is from a few years ago in Chicago. I don't remember why. I was just stupid enough to do it. When it was free agency and I was living there, I was like, if Andy Dalton signs with the Bears, I'm getting a shirt for no reason. He wasn't even in line to start. It was Justin Fields, all of that. I'm like, I just need it anyway because I need an excuse. He wasn't going to the Jets. So I was like, I need an excuse to have an Andy Dalton shirt just to have it. And yesterday it finally came in handy for me.
And look, like you said, it finally came in handy for you. We're going to be talking about Andy Dalton as well as so many other teams throughout the NFL. And I've said this on Twitter. Big movement week in the NFL, week 3. And now that's often how it goes, right? Week 1, then we got the big overreactions to week 1. Week 2 normally goes, okay, probably the opposite direction because things like to even out. But then in week 3, it feels like, all bets are off. You have no idea who's going to show up. Is it going to be the week 1 team? Is it going to be the week 2 team? Is it going to be the team that we thought this organization was in the preseason? You just don't know. And that's why week 3 is one of the most fun weeks in the NFL. And we're going to break it down here like we have over the last couple of weeks. We'll give you our stat that told the story for every single game and then give you a most disappointing and most impressive as well. But we will be sure to dig into these top 5s too. If you guys want to check out beyond the top 5 as we go through all these, you can do so with premium stats over at PFF.com. Get yourself a PFF Plus subscription. That's the best way to do that. So head on over there and you can follow along on the show with us. Shout out to everybody who's watching this thing live in the chat. We'll be going back and forth with you over the next 2 hours as we get to every single game that we saw from Sunday. And we'll do the Thursday night game too. We'll do that one.
Have to. Come on now.
Well, we have to just for you. I mean, we would have anyways, but I'll make you feel good.
I know you're going to cut it short on me, but we have to do it to some extent.
It depends how quickly we get through the show.
Well, that's a move.
All right, let's get to it. Texans Vikings. That's the first game that we're talking about here in the 1 p.m. slate. Man, this is one of those games where Texans looked like they were just taking care of business as usual. They were going to cruise to the AFC South, one of the best records in the NFL, and maybe that still happens, but as Lee Corso says, not so fast, my friend. This week, we got another darling team in the Minnesota Vikings who really took it to him. 34-7, the final score in this one. Let's take a look at the top 5 players from this game. And we'll start out with the Minnesota Vikings just because I want to start out with the team that won. Wide receiver Justin Jefferson, he takes the top spot, earning a 78.9 overall grade this past week. Aaron Jones, the new guy in town, the rival flipping from one side to the other, 78.6. Edge rusher Jonathan Grenard got a 73.6 at number 4. Harrison Smith, the ageless, it feels like, Harrison Smith, their safety, a 73.0, and offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw at number 5 with a 71.9. Quarterback Sam Darnold in this one, he would have been in the top 5, got a 73.5. And then on the other side of things for the Houston Texans, Nico Collins takes the top spot with an 81.0 overall grade. Offensive tackle Titus Howard next at a 76.7. Running back Cam Akers at a 72.2. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs, 72.1. Edge rusher Will Anderson with a 72.1 as well. Quarterback C.J. Stroud, believe his worst game of the season, of this young season yet, 64.6 overall grade in this one. Dalton, what was your stat that told the story here with this blowout that I don't think a lot of people thought was going to be a blowout? And if they did, they thought it would be on the other side of things. What do you think?
So we kind of already knew the Vikings offense was rolling, right? And they put up 34 points against a good defense, which is obviously a really good number. But I think even, especially with some of the injuries they had, right? Mekhi Blackmon's out for the year. Ivan Pace was out for this game. But Brian Flores just keeps finding defense. And to only play Houston and give up 7 points is incredible. That's an incredible effort by their defense. Couple of turnovers. And I think Brian Flores mixing up these looks on all these young quarterbacks. There's so many quarterbacks right now in their mid to early 20s, and maybe they just haven't seen the full gauntlet for years and years like guys like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and all these guys did, where they're just football savants, right? And obviously, I'm not saying C.J. Stroud's not a smart quarterback, but there's things Brian Flores threw at him, just like Brock Purdy last week, that they just haven't seen before. It's weird. He runs his defense, I should say, different than anybody else, and the Vikings blitzed on 64.2% of Houston's plays, run or pass, and you can see it in the Texans' grade, not just Stroud, but all over the place. The Texans' grade when the Vikings didn't blitz as an offense was 76.5, and when they did was 64.6. So as he just kept laying on the gas and they just kept holding him to 7 points and holding him down, and the Vikings had a lead and he could just keep staying aggressive because they had a lead, you saw the same exact thing from the Texans that you saw from the 49ers last week. And it wasn't necessarily always that they got to Stroud or they racked up sacks, but he was clearly just uncomfortable and thinking about it or even rushing it a bit. You could see Stroud playing at a slightly more frenetic pace than he usually does. Usually he's so calm back there, and he's got such a good idea of the timing, even throws where he's about to be hit. We saw against the Bears last week how he's so good improvising, rolling out, making plays on the move, just like we've seen ever since that Georgia game, his last game in college. But this week he just like Purdy last week, he looked a little bit rushed.
Yes.
And it's because Brian Flores, even if he doesn't get there, and they don't have the most talented defense in the league, there's just this constant feeling of like, they're always on me and I don't know where they're coming from, and they're rolling coverages, and they're running zone, they're running man, they're running zero, they're running just everything. Brian Flores is throwing the kitchen sink at quarterbacks every single week, and you could see, just like last week with San Francisco, it affected Stroud and the Texans a lot.
Yeah, especially these younger quarterbacks, and I think that's probably something to keep note of moving forward. You know, Stroud's not a rookie, Brock Purdy's not a rookie, but now in back-to-back weeks, these are two quarterbacks who are younger in the league that Flores has gotten the better of, right? I mean, like, he has been unbelievable with the resources that he has thrown at the pocket and how he confuses these really smart quarterbacks who, Stroud, not really a quarterback last year who was putting the ball into harm's way a lot. Brock Purdy, he's not one to do it much at all. And Flores just continued to have these guys, the famous Sam Darnold line, seeing ghosts. And that's what it felt like, is that even when the pocket was clean, they didn't act like the pocket was clean, or they weren't as confident as they normally are. So shout out to Brian Flores. As Brock Purdy said last week, scheme is crazy, man. And it is. And I think that we're seeing them really dial it up against these younger quarterbacks. So as we kind of talk about, like, okay, we'll look at, spreads and, okay, like which team we think is going to win each week. Brian Flores against a quarterback that has been in the league less than 3 years. He's got the upper hand at this point. So I think that's just something to note moving forward. Stat that told the story for me. I think DeMeco Ryans is a phenomenal head coach. I think he's a great defensive mind. We saw that as soon as last week with the Houston Texans. But this week against the Minnesota Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, that offense, Sam Darnold, the wide receivers, they just had their number. The Texans' coverage and how poor it was is the stat that told the story for me, because when you look at their cornerbacks, Derek Stingley Jr., 61.2 coverage grade, and one of his passes that came his way, one of the two, was credited as an open target. Kamari Laster, 54.5 coverage grade, 4 open targets when he was the closest defender there. Jalen Petrie, 33.4 coverage grade, 5 open targets throughout this game. So it wasn't just that, okay, they weren't getting their hands on the football as much. They were sort of in a situation where, I obviously didn't watch every single snap from this one, but certainly looking at the open target percentage, either these wide receivers were just fooling them with them being in single coverage, or the zone or the matching just was not as cohesive as it needed to be. And whatever the Vikings were throwing at them, they just weren't quite ready for it. There were way too many open targets here for this Texans defense that we've seen be really good, even over the last 2 weeks of this early season. So that, to me, and how poorly they played, how open those Minnesota Vikings wide receivers were, is a stat that told the story.
Yeah, and Kevin O'Connell's a master of getting them open, right? And you got to think how dangerous this offense could be. They did not have Jordan Addison yesterday, and they haven't had TJ Hawkinson yet, recovering from the knee injury. So, I mean, wait till they get all these guys back, and they're scheming it. Jalen Naylor looks really, really useful right now.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what you have to like about this offense, too. I know Darnold and the passing game is a story, but Aaron Jones has been fantastic for them, too. You look at 24 touches and 148 total yards, had a receiving touchdown himself, 4 forces 5 missed tackles, one of the best players on the team yesterday. Them having balance behind what is a good offensive line. You look at all of the tools now with Jones coming in there as an improvement from anything they had at running back last year. Now, I mean, this is a completely loaded offense that if you have now Jordan Addison getting back soon and TJ Hawkinson coming back soon with Jefferson, maybe the best receiver in football, with Jalen Naylor, they got Johnny Munt catching touchdowns. They've got Ty Chandler behind Jones. They're absolutely loaded. They got a great pair of tackles. It's no wonder Sam Darnold's having all this success because they can do everything on offense. And Aaron Jones, we've seen it for years and years. When he is healthy, when he's on the field, he is one of the best backs, a top 8, top 10 back in football. And one of the few guys I think that is really versatile, really a 3-down back. We saw him catch a touchdown. He can do everything on the field, and even if they need to spell him, Ty Chandler's kind of that two-way back too. So look, the Vikings are loaded, but I think there is an element, and I know you're about to say it too, Kevin O'Connell's just using all of the tools in the box right now.
He is, and Aaron Jones being your most impressive in this game, Kevin O'Connell is the most impressive for me in this game. Just again, how he won this chess match against a really good head coach and a really good defensive mind in D'Amico Ryans. Something I looked up before the game is that I wanted to know how often the Texans called cover 3 because a lot of the big plays against them in this past game came against cover 3, and I was like, was this something that Kevin O'Connell was ready for and really schemed up? Because it looked like, again, from as much success they had, that would be the case. So the Texans going into this week, and I get it, small sample size, it's only the first 2 weeks of the season, but still, that's what you go off of. Texans had the highest coverage grade of any team in the NFL when calling cover 3 through the first 2 weeks of the season, and they were ranked 10th in how often they ran it, running that coverage the most. You saw on some of the biggest plays of this game, Kevin O'Connell specifically call plays that were attacking cover 3, right? I mean, like it's designed stuff to beat cover 3. It is overload routes or, overload concepts, I should say, to one side of the field or one part of the zone, or it's, clear out routes where you have a guy kind of occupy his zone and then get out of his zone just a little bit to open up something underneath or open up something over top. We saw that multiple times as well. I loved what he was able to do in the red zone. There was on the first Sam Darnold touchdown, it was a double China route, which is where you have 2 in-breaking routes paired with a corner route. And it's just a really good way to attack the defense in a small amount of space, often forcing, if you're playing any sort of zone coverage, these guys to sort of follow receivers a little bit too long. And if you follow them a little bit too long, a concept like that and a formation like that is so advantageous for you. And it felt like Kevin O'Connell was calling those things in the most advantageous situations. And he called that concept at the goal line, and I remember on another one of Darnold's touchdowns, the Jalen Naylor touchdown over the middle, it wasn't quite like the combination of the double in route with the corner route, so it wasn't, I guess, technically a China concept, but it was that double in pairing once again with, I think, a backfield route going the opposite direction as well. So it was sort of the same principles, which helped get Jalen Naylor open for that touchdown as well. So it just, in the chess match of coaches and football minds, Kevin O'Connell was the one who stood out. That showed up on the scoreboard. I think he's one of the best coaches in the NFL. And you see the Vikings, I'll say overachieving for my expectations. Some people out there might be saying, hey, we believed in them all along. Big shout out to you. They have a great start this season. But yeah, if you got Kevin O'Connell thoughts, we'd love to hear him. But if not, let's move on to the most disappointing.
No, totally agree. And that's an offense. I'll just say that the Texans didn't face a Shanahan sort of offense like that the first 2 weeks between Shane Steichen and Shane Waldron. That's a little bit different from what O'Connell runs in Minnesota, and it's an offense designed to beat single high like that. So it's really it's the perfect target for them. And actually, this is another game where I'm going to make a similar point later. So O'Connell is one of the best play callers in the league. I'll move to the Texans defense real quick.
All right.
One of the preseason concerns that we had, one of the very few with this team, was their interior play on defense or defensive tackles. And they're going to need a big improvement, because if there's one thing that we're seeing right now is that those concerns were well warranted. Texans defensive tackles in this game had a 39.5 overall grade and a 29.2 run defense grade. Guys like Khalil Davis and Foley Fadukasi and Mario Edwards, it's a struggle right now on the inside. You can tell that they're missing a star interior player. They loaded up on the edge. You've got Hunter and Anderson. They're really good in the secondary, but this is the one spot, I think, again, Aaron Jones having a big day. I believe it was 124 rushing yards. Interior, you can run right at the Texans right now on the inside. Their defensive tackles are 31st in overall grade right now, only ahead of Dallas, and Dallas's defensive tackles in the middle of their defense have been getting all the talk, but Houston is struggling right now. And you saw it in the first game against the Colts. The Bears didn't run on them as much because they've got a little more internal issues running the ball, but this is going to be a theme here with the Texans, their ability to stop the run and control the clock a little bit better from the defensive side. They need their D tackles to play a little bit better.
Brandon saying in the chat, when you leave Justin Jefferson wide open while Stingley guards some grass, it's not going to end well. I think, again, that's more of a Kevin O'Connell hat tip. Derek Stingley's not just guarding grass because he likes to guard grass. I think that it's because he really got the upper hand, really attacking what he believed the Texans were going to do in coverage. The most disappointing for me is the Texans' run game. Weren't able to stay balanced in the second half. You know, I understand that they were down on the scoreboard. It was 14-0 at half. I think it went to... Oh, did it go to 14-7? No, it must have gone 21-0 and then 21-7, and then it kind of became a runaway there. But only 2 rushing attempts in the second half for the Houston Texans. It's just not a formula to win. You've got to be able to stay more balanced than that, even when you're down on the scoreboard. And they were not able to do that here in this one. Next game that I want to get to, the Philadelphia Eagles at the New Orleans Saints. Eagles win this one 15-12 in a game that played out, I think, in a way that no one expected, right? People thought, okay, if Philly's going to win this game, it's going to be via shootout or at least something in the 20s, maybe low 30s scoring-wise because of what we've seen from the Saints offense so far this season. And that was pregame. And then we got into the game. You and I were watching this one together. You get into the game, and it's like the Eagles, they're just shooting themselves in the foot. They're getting all these yards. They can't score. They can't put points to the board. And so it was like, even during the game, you felt like Philly wasn't going to win. And then when the clock struck 0, it goes, oh, Philly won the game. All right, I get it. Okay, great. Good win for the Eagles, I guess. But
almost the same way as week 1 against the Packers, where it was like, I guess okay.
That's how it felt.
Good enough?
That's how it felt. So I want to get into your stat that told the story, but let's get to the top 5 first. Let's review those. We'll start with the Philadelphia Eagles again because they won, so I'll give them the hat tip here. Jalen Carter, top of the list. Holy cow. This dude can just take over an entire football game, and we'll get to him in a little bit. 93.5 overall grade in this one. Safety Reed Blankenship coming up with the game-winning interception, 91.7. Tight end Dallas Goedert, hell of a day from him. I know we're going to talk about him in a little bit. 81.4 overall grade. Linebacker Zach Bond, a little revenge game for him as the former New Orleans Saint, 81.3. And then Saquon Barkley, the newcomer there at number 5 with an 80.5 overall grade. Jalen Hurts with a 71.8. Flip over to the other side, the New Orleans Saints. The grades aren't bad. It's not like we're looking at a team that just played horribly over here. Chris Olave is at the top of the list with an elite 90.3 grade. Carl Granderson very close behind him with an 88.9. Linebacker Willie Gay, 85.9. Cornerback Paulson Adebo with a 79.9. And then Marshawn Lattimore back with the team now after missing a little bit of time, 72.7 grade. And then quarterback Derek Carr, 67.5. That's got to be the lowest of these last 3 games for him just because he has graded so well over the last couple of weeks. But stat that told the story. I feel like there's a couple of different ways that we could go here, so I'm curious, what is the stat that told the story for you here with the result?
So it starts with the Saints having 3.1 yards per carry. We know through the first 2 weeks it's been Clint Kubiak, it's been zone running, it's been deep play action shots, right? And so you think about those themes, and they only had 89 rushing yards on 29 carries, and Derek Carr just 2 for 6 with 5 yards on play action, and they only completed 2 deep balls, and he threw an interception and 56 yards on 2 of 5 attempts. So all of the things that the Saints want to do, the Eagles took away. And Vic Fangio may have called the best defensive game of anyone in the league yesterday. Here's what he did. It's kind of weird. You would normally think about extra run support as either like, okay, you get a base, you get a third linebacker going, or you bring a safety down, we run a bunch of single high, right? That's not what he did. They stayed in 2 high, so the Saints couldn't take deep shots. But then they went with a bunch of defensive linemen. They went with a big flat look, 5 or 6 defensive linemen on, especially on early downs, a lot. The Eagles had 5 or more D linemen on the field, 27 out of 56 of their defensive snaps, okay? And almost all of those on early downs, right? Running downs when the Saints want to just line up and run outside zone, right?
Yep.
So nearly half of their snaps with 5 or more D linemen on the field. In their first 2 games, they only had 12 snaps combined with 5 or more defensive linemen on the field.
So they watch the tape.
Yeah, literally
watch the tape.
They said there's 2 goals here with the Saints. They want to run the ball, and they want to take shots deep. So they put 5-6 defensive linemen down, and they left 2 high back there, basically quarters behind it. Instead of going single high and extra safeties and loading, they didn't load the box they just loaded the line of scrimmage, and it worked, and they kept the coverage back. What they dared the Saints to do was throw it in like the 5 to 15-yard range. And there's not a lot of quick game in this offense right now. They don't really spread it out and run a lot of quick game. There's not a lot of like 8, 10-yard outs and things like that to kind of beat those curl flat guys in quarters. So they just said, okay, we're going to build this house through the floor and through the ceiling, and we're not going to worry about anything in between. If they want to throw it 12 to 15 yards,
no interior decoration at all.
No interior design, no just nothing. If you had a 3-story house, the second floor is empty. They're renting it out. They don't care. 12 to 15 yards for the Saints yesterday almost didn't exist. The couple of throws that they did make in that range, they hit them. But the goal was to not let, we saw Rashid Shaheed in the first 2 weeks with long touchdowns, game-changing touchdowns, not letting it happen. You could see them sitting so far back on the back end, but pressing so hard forward on the defensive line that they just took away the two things the Saints wanted to do. Vic Fangio, I think, called the best defensive game of anyone in the league yesterday. He deserves a lot of credit for this win.
No, I completely agree with you. I think that's a good transition into my most disappointing here, which was the Saints run game. And I do want to recognize that Eric McCoy, their best offensive lineman,
the highest graded lineman in football. Right?
Yeah, I mean, he only played 3 plays in this game and he's out. So from there, he's their center. Lucas Patrick, who's also graded really well, but at the guard position, they moved him over to center. So I think it was Oliudo who could play at that guard spot, who is normally a tackle. So everybody kind of like shifted down one. So you're switching things up along the interior offensive line. I know Cesar Ruiz got hurt a little bit in this game as well, but the run game was not what it needed to be. There's no doubt about it. And I think that's the offensive line's a reason why, but I think that, to your credit, what the Eagles did was great in neutralizing that, because Derek Carr, for as great as he has been through the first 2 weeks of the season, 30th in the NFL in those 2 weeks in total passing attempts. So it's not like he was lighting the world on fire, throwing for more than 400 yards with over, 30, 35 passing attempts. That's not what he was doing. It was just the fact that what Clint Kubiak was calling was working. And so you were just seeing it maximized in the yards, in the points. But they were able to supplement that so much with a great run game. And I think that's an underrated part, and what I'm glad that you recognize there, of what has made the Saints offense so great through weeks 1 and week 2. Yes, Derek Carr is playing well. Yes, I mean, it's the deep shots to Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave and all of that stuff. But it is through the run game. It is setting that up. And it was disappointing to see that they were not able to get that going. The NFL and the NFL season, it's about the ebbs and flows, right? It's about, okay, you're doing something really great. Defensive coordinators get paid a lot of money too. So they're going to watch the film and they're going to figure it out. And this past week, Clint Kubiak got figured out a little bit. So how does he punch back? What's next for the New Orleans Saints? I think that's going to be something that's very intriguing to watch. Their run defense, though, I mean, if we talk about the run game was disappointing, I thought their run defense was also far too subpar for this team to be able to go where they want to go. There was not a single Saints box defender, which is interior defensive linemen, edge rushers, linebackers, that had a run defense grade above 58. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough. And certainly you saw Saquon Barkley's high grades because of it. Jalen Hurts was able to get things going on the ground. And it's just, when you let a team like Philadelphia stay with their run game as long as they were able to me, that's the stat that told the story, because it kept Philly in the game. They're down A.J. Brown. They don't have A.J. Brown in this game. I know Dallas Goedert he went off in this game, but that's pretty much where you want to live, right? You basically want to say, hey, if Dallas Goedert's got to beat us, like Dallas Goedert can beat us. And he had a career day. Saquon Barkley had a great day. Philly still only scored 15 points. Now, I know, again, like Sirianni, a couple of his decisions, shooting his team in the foot there, I understand that. They could have scored more. But to me, the Saints could have won this game if they simply defended the run better. That's it. Even for as inept as their offense was, you defend the run a little bit better, even at an average level. And I think the Saints win this game, and I think they're 3-0. But they weren't able to do that. The floor is too low right now for the Saints' run defense for them to be a serious contender as we move forward. And I think that not only does the pass game and their run game have to get figured out, but they've got to be better in run defense as well.
Yeah, I agree. And it was surprising to me on the tape to see Demario Davis really struggle in this game, because you don't see that very often. So I just think all the way around, we were worried about the Saints in the trenches in the preseason. The McCoy injury is big on the offensive side. And then I think on defense, look, the D-line was something we were a little bit worried about too. whereas, you have a guy like Brian Brzee, who was pretty good in this game, but is known more as a pass rusher than a run blocker, right? Or a run defender. Cam Jordan's getting a little older, so they need to be better in the trenches on both sides, but they were still close to winning this game. What was it? They were up 3-0 going into the fourth quarter. It was a 3-0 game, I think it was.
Going into the fourth, it was still 3-0?
I believe so. And all those points were then scored in the fourth quarter. I mean, this is the type of game they got in. But even just the one long run by Barkley, right, the long touchdown, just one crack in your defense and one false step by a linebacker, that can make the difference in a game like that, in a game that ends up 15-12. Absolutely.
I'll be damned. You are correct. It was 3-0 going into the fourth quarter, and then Saquon Barkley had the, how long was the run? What was it, like 65 yards or something like that?
In there, yeah.
65 yards. Yeah, 65 yards to sort of open up the scoring a little bit. And then the flood games came in, and it was 15-12. Most impressive in this game before we move on.
Has to be Dallas Goedert. Has to be.
No, it doesn't. And I'll get somebody else, but
Offensively, then it has to be Dallas
there
Goedert.
You go.
Look, 11 catches, 170 yards, both career highs, 84.4 receiving grade, and just, you mentioned it, A.J. Brown out for the game. Devontae Smith suffered a concussion during the game, so he was out for a lot of the second half. Goddard just it played out of his mind. Explosive plays. They did a really nice job scheming him up from the start of the game to the finish. And one of the best individual play calls, I'll tell you, of the day was Kellen Moore. So the big play to Goddard at the very end, that the long catch and run down the left sideline. The fun part about that for the Eagles is the play before that. Look, when Dennis Allen, big situations, he's going to go man-to-man. He's going to blitz. He's going to get aggressive, right? So the play before that, they had Goddard doubled. They had him bracketed, right? And I think it was something incomplete or a short gain somewhere around there. And Kellen Moore saw it, and he goes, okay, he's going to blitz again. They're going to go man because that's what Dennis Allen does. And I have to still find a way to get the ball to him, right? And they run this mesh concept. And Goddard is doubled. Absolutely. And he takes off on his shallow, and you have two guys run into each other because they run this mesh, and even through the double team, Moore still found a way to get the ball to Goddard for the biggest play of the game that set up Barkley's second touchdown. Great play call, just representative of also a great day from him. He just made multiple explosives that really turned this game in the Eagles' favor. Game of his career, honestly. You talk about 100. How many times this year we're going to see a tight end get 170 yards? That might stand all season as the high. So, with Brown and Smith both out, because there were times early in the game when it looked like just Devontae Smith, just like last week, it just looked like, we'll just find a way to throw it to Devontae Smith. And then he goes out, and it's like, okay, what do we have left? Because we haven't seen much of Jahan Dotson, but huge game from Goddard, and they needed every bit of it.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. They really did. My most impressive, on the opposite side of things, I was joking around a little bit, but Jalen Carter, I said it at the top of this preview, he can be a one-man wrecking crew, man. He is that talented. In this game, they very, very clearly said to Jalen Carter, we're putting you in front of Cesar Ruiz. You're better than him. Remind him of that every time the ball is snapped. He doesn't deserve to be in front of you. Get him behind you, right? And I think that is just the mentality that he played with the entire game. There were so many reps where Jalen Carter was just hitting some form of like a club and an arm over, or you call it for a swim if you want to, but it was just a devastating move that Cesar Ruiz just could not handle. And Ruiz, he's a bigger dude. He's played the center position. He's played the guard position as well. But those lateral movements have been tough for him. And Carter just exposed that so much in this game. 94.0 pass rush grade for Jalen Carter, 30.4 pass rush win percentage, 4 pressures. And the reason why I really wanted to bring Jalen Carter up is because I don't know how many people will appreciate the game he had because he had 0 sacks. Like, he's not it was not a stat stuffing game for him, and it wasn't even something that you could look at a common stat sheet and go, oh, at least he got a sack. But he was wrecking this game with how quickly and how often he was matched up with Cesar Ruiz, and he was getting the advantage there. So Jalen Carter, grown-ass man game from him, just an unbelievable performance, and showing why he was one of the top prospects in his draft class coming out because of what he was able to do. And it's just been a fantastic career so far for him and what he is, and sort of how devastating that he has been against all the teams that he has gone up against. Next game I want to get to, Chargers at Steelers here. Up and down for the Chargers so far this season. Steelers, man, they've got their brand of football, and they are coasting. I mean, let's get to the Steelers' top 5 graded players. Their guard, James Daniels, an elite 93.2 grade in this game. Cam Hayward, the ageless wonder, 35 years old. He's out here still doing it, man. 90.2 overall grade here. Center Zach Frazier, another fantastic game for the rookie at number 3, 88.8. Wide receiver Calvin Austin had an 82.0. And then cornerback Joey Porter Jr. I know some people have been asking why Joey Porter Jr.'s grades have been a little bit lower. Well, here he is in the top 5, getting the recognition here in this game, 74.8. Justin Fields, 75.4 in this game. We'll definitely kind of break that down a little bit further in a second. Los Angeles Chargers edge rusher Khalil Mack, talk about guys who are still doing it at an older age, 82.2, I should say, at the top of the list here for the Chargers. Cornerback Christian Fulton with a 74.0. Wide receiver Ladd McConkey getting to be a major focal point of this passing attack, 71.3. Guard Zion Johnson with a 68.1. Wide receiver Quentin Johnson, a 65.9. And then Justin Herbert, just very clearly banged up, very clearly limited. He was in the post-game press conference wearing a boot. That ankle is just not right. 58.8 in this game, and he didn't even make it through the entire performance. So the Pittsburgh Steelers getting a win here, 3-0, 3-0 on the season. What was the stat that told the story here for you?
So it's really just the Steelers defense. Look, the Chargers in the second half, they ran 15 plays. They had the ball for 9 minutes and 48 seconds, and they had 0 total yards in the second half. This Steeler team, if they didn't have the Steeler logo on the helmet, I would think they're the Iowa Hawkeyes, because that's just what they're playing like. They are going to play lights out defense, better than almost anybody in the NFL right now. Justin Fields is managing the game well. He's not doing anything particularly flashy. Couple nice throws over the middle, but he's gotten this. Mike Tomlin's gotten through to him. Look, kid, just don't blow the game. Don't blow the game. Yeah. We may have the best defense in football. We've got T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward and Joey Porter and Minkah Fitzpatrick and all these guys on defense who are playing extremely well. Patrick Queen as well. Just don't blow it. If you don't turn the ball over, and he's one of few quarterbacks. We'll get there in a second too. One of just 3 quarterbacks right now without a turnover-worthy play that's made at least 2 starts actually. So he is just not blowing it. He's taking off running when he needs to. He's not forcing shots downfield. He's checking the ball down. And honestly, if it's third down and nothing's there, cool, we'll punt it away, because there are very few offenses, especially not this Chargers one right now. And I know the Chargers have been good. They've been good in the run game and trying to find it in the passing game now, especially after Herbert getting hurt and Taylor Heineke coming in. It just became the Steelers just going, you're not going 80 or 90 yards on us.
Right.
You just can't do it.
Yep.
And they've instilled that in Fields as well. But giving up, I don't care if it's Herbert or Heineke or whoever, you give up 0 yards and a half in the NFL, that's just dominant. I mean, their defense right now is incredible. Like I said, this looks like the Iowa Hawkeyes, the way they're playing, and they're just going to keep winning like that.
I totally agree with that, and it starts up front with this team. This defensive line for the Steelers is simply one of the best in the NFL. And I know that I'm not like breaking any news there. We thought of them going into the season, and they're just playing at an incredibly high level. 87.7 overall grade as a team. That's the defensive line. So you're just sorting for the interior defensive linemen and the edge rushers. 73.5 run defense and 83.8 pass rush grade. Specifically stopping the Chargers' run game. Like, even with Herbert limited, I thought was really, really impressive. The Chargers' EPA per rush ranking through the first 3 weeks of the season. Okay, week 1, remember, J.K. Dobbins had more than 130 yards rushing in week 1 and week 2. So, in week 1, their EPA per rush was 17th in the league. Week 2, it was 13th. This past week against the Steelers, 24th. Like, very clearly limiting this team in exactly what they want to do. They knew their game plan going in. Justin Herbert being a little limited, that made sense that they were going to sort of sell out for this area, but they just absolutely dominated. And that has to be the story of when the Steelers, when it comes time to call upon the Steelers defensive line, they are going to answer. They are that talented. They are that well executed. Like, it is so good. But Nick Herbig, okay? We didn't even have him on the top 5 because our parameters are normally you have to play at least 25 snaps in the game, because the way that PFF statistics and grades work specifically is larger sample sizes mean more, right? When you have a larger sample size, you could tell the full story. It paints the whole picture for you. So when you play less than 25 snaps, sometimes you could have a couple of good plays or a couple of bad plays really skew a grade. So we think that that's sometimes unfair of players. So we set those parameters at 25. Nick Herbig played 17 snaps in this game. So he didn't qualify for that top 5. But in those 17 snaps, he had a 94.6 pass rush grade, 2 sacks, 3 pressures, 50% pass rush win percentage. So they're even understanding when to put their situational guys in the game, how to maximize that part of it. Now, one of his pressures was against Rashawn Slater, but Rashawn Slater went out in this game. I'll kind of talk about that more in a second. 3 of them came against Trey Pipkins, but it was simply, hey, this guy cannot guard his outside shoulder, not against your speed. Go after him. And he did. It's a great game plan. The Steelers' defensive line understands their strengths and weaknesses, and they put players in positions to succeed so well. So to me, the stat that told the story is how dominant this defensive line continues to remain with their veterans and with their young guys as well. But most impressive for you, who you got?
Well, I'll stay with the Iowa Hawkeye theme, and I'll go with that highest graded guy for the Steelers. That's James Daniels. What a year he's having so far. And the Steelers have some shuffling going at offensive tackle. There is no issue on the inside, both with Daniels and with rookie center Zach Frazier as well. But Daniels right now, a 93.2 overall grade, 93.3 for the season. He is the highest graded guard in football right now. And I believe the 3rd highest graded offensive lineman. He is having an absolute breakout year. Still a pretty young guy, even though he's been in the league for a while. Used to be with the Bears for a few years. Daniels and Frazier, both on the interior, are just mauling people. And I'll tell you, the Steelers, same thing on offense. They want to run the ball. They want to give Fields manageable throws, but there's some road grading going on in the Steelers' interior. It starts with James Daniels. If he keeps playing like this, he's going to find himself on an all-pro team because they are just – if they can figure out some consistency, and Troy Fautanu's on IR now, so it's going to be Dan Moore and Broderick Jones at tackle. If they can find more consistency at tackle, this offensive line is starting to look dangerous, especially on the inside with Daniels.
Yeah, my most impressive is Justin Fields, and you sort of introed a little bit of kind of what I would highlight, so I'm just going to echo a lot of the things that you said there. 4 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays, 82.1 adjusted completion percentage so far this season. But the stat that I love the most about Justin Fields 3 weeks into the season, it's not even the 0 turnover-worthy plays. 2.91 time to throw. That's under 3 seconds for the first time in his NFL career. When you talk about Justin Fields and the incredible talent that he was coming out of the 2021 class, he's coming from an offense at Ohio State that was very vertical. You had great receivers to throw the ball to. You had offensive linemen that could block all day for you. And so he naturally looked for the biggest plays because Ohio State's offense allowed him to do that. Maximize a big arm that he had, hold on to the ball a little bit longer. The college defensive linemen weren't fast enough to tackle him anyway, so he didn't really have to worry about it. So everything that Fields was looking at was often in the intermediate or deep portions of the field. It's what Ohio State's offense was really great at. In the passing game when he was there, I should say. When he gets to Chicago, you saw a lot of those tendencies there. He was big game hunting, if you will. He's looking for those big passes. And the instability with, who's calling the plays and the offensive mind's in his ear. Okay, now we're switching up to this philosophy. Now this, and the offensive line's not as good as it needs to be, and the receiving group's not as good as it needs to be, and the run game's not as good as it needs to be. Like all of these moving parts with Justin Fields, to me, sort of stunted the evidence of what could have been growth for him in the early parts of his NFL career. There was a play specifically in this game that was just a simple check down that Benjamin Solak, who works for ESPN, you should go follow all of his great work. He does a great job covering the league. He highlighted this on Twitter and he tweeted it out, and I completely agree with him. It was a simple dump-off pass for Justin Fields. And you go, not really anything of note here. But the thing that Solak pointed out, and I completely agree with him, there is a deeper route that Fields could have either tried to attempt, and it would have been poor because he probably would have thrown a turnover-worthy play there, or at least locked in on that route until it very much was not an option anymore. And then at that point, the check down's not an option anymore because you missed the timing, and now you got to take off and run. Now you're probably getting sacked. And instead, he hikes it, he goes, all right, there's 1, 2, 3 defenders around the deep guy. Nope, checking him down. Boom, gets to the check down immediately. That's a lower time to throw. That's a good completion percentage, and it sets your offense up. It completely eliminates what could be negatives with Justin Fields. So, yes, we haven't seen him be this world beater, push the ball deep down the field type of a quarterback yet. But Justin Fields is improving. He is evolving. He is growing. And I think that is a greater conversation that we can have about some of these young quarterbacks that we throw out there in the NFL way too early. And when they don't grow within the first 4 games of their NFL career, we go, what's wrong with this bum? And Fields really struggled. He needed to change his scenery, but I'm just saying he was most impressive in this game, and I loved what we saw from him because to me it was real, tangible growth, especially in the time to throw category for him.
And that play that you mentioned through the first 3 games is probably between 12 and 15 of those that we've seen.
Yes.
It's just you're seeing, and I think it's about to the team and the mindset and just, I call it understanding the assignment, okay? As a quarterback, what's the day that I need to throw for 350 yards? And what's the day that I need to throw for $150 and let the defense win and let the rest of it win, right? Yesterday was a day, and really the way their defense is playing the first 3 games, listen, Justin, if you go out there and throw for 180 yards and you don't throw a pick, you're doing just fine with the team you're playing because they're not a team that has to score 35 points right now. They get to 20 points, teams are going to have a hard time beating them. I think you're right. You're seeing the adjustments to taking second reads, taking checkdowns. And honestly, even when he runs, it is more decisive. It is north and south. It's get my 6 yards and slide and be done with it. Instead of we used to see all those plays with the Bears where it was, all right, let's spin back out of the pocket. Let's run 30 yards this way. Let's run 30 yards back this way. And then let's go, and then we'll make something crazy happen. But that's too high variance. You have to. I think there's one thing that needs to be said about quarterbacks. Mahomes is awesome at it. Getting north and south. When it's time to run, just go. Be as decisive about the running as you are about the throwing. And all of a sudden, an incredible athlete like Fields or even Mahomes, they're very dangerous because all of a sudden, they just decided in that split second. You can tell if a guy's scrambling around back there, okay, he's going to take off and run. It gives the defense time to catch up, right? It's one of the things I loved about Jaden Daniels and the way he runs at LSU and
Sure.
Washington, where it is when he decides, he's gone. That's it. It's north and south. It's across the line of scrimmage. Fields is doing that right now. Great decision-making. Real quick, my most disappointing just ties into your thing about the Steelers D-line. Chargers have to win with the run game. Didn't do it in this game. 20 carries, 61 yards, only one explosive run. This is where their explosives have been created, is in the run game with J.K. Dobbins. Couldn't make it happen in this one. The injuries are more obviously concerning if Slater and or Joe Alt are both hurt, and now it's going to come even into more spotlight if Justin Herbert misses any games. Didn't have it today. I think, Harbaugh's building it. Him and Greg Roman always have good run games, so I do think it's more of a matchup thing being against the Steelers, but that's how they have to win games and didn't get it done up front in this one.
Yeah, my most disappointing is just in a little bit of a joking term, the NFL script for the Chargers right now, because they say that the league is scripted,
it's
right?
always there
And the
for
script
them
for the
especially.
Chargers just sucks right now. Herbert's hurt, Joe Alt's hurt, Rayshon Slater's hurt, Joey Bosa's hurt. I mean, it's hard to win a football game when your cornerstone guys just go down like that. So I just think that's the most disappointing for me, because I think the Chargers were really going places, and I'm not saying that they were going to win the Super Bowl this year, but anytime that it's injuries are the part that you have to deal with that's holding you back, it sucks. And it sucks for a team that's as exciting as the Chargers have been over the last couple of weeks. So hopefully those guys can heal up and get back on the field soon. Bears at Colts. Indianapolis winning this game 21-16. I think it looked ugly at time on both sides of the ball, but hey, ugly wins are still wins. So for the Indianapolis Colts, the top 5 graded players, you love to see Edge 1, baby, at the top of this list. My top edge rusher for the 2024 NFL Draft, Laiatu Latu, with an 85.1 to lead all Indianapolis Colts players. Offensive tackle, Braden Smith next on the list with an 84.0. Quentin Nelson, their guard, 82.5 at number 3. Cornerback Kenny Moore, the second, 80.6. And then we had defensive tackle Grover Stewart with a 77.2. Anthony Richardson in this game, 53.0. Flipping sides to the Chicago Bears. Cole Kmet was the top-graded player on this team, 86.6 in this game. Safety Kevin Byard with an 83.5. Running back Roshan Johnson with a 75.1. And then 2 offensive tackles at 4 and 5. Darnell Wright with a 69.6. And then Braxton Jones with an equal 69.6 in this game. Caleb Williams with a 57.4 overall grade, which takes into passing grade and rushing grade into account there. What's the stat that told the story here, Dalton?
So, headlined by a couple guys for the Colts in that top 5. Here's what I'll tell you. Last week, I was on a Colts podcast after 0-2.
Wow, brag.
And they just lost.
Guy gets invited on podcasts.
Well, and they just lost to Malik Willis, and the sky is falling, and basically half the questions were, how do we fix this? What in the world do? We look like a mess. We're 0-2. We lost to Malik Willis, our run D and our offense and all of this stuff. And very calmly, I basically said, listen, you got an elite offensive line, just lean on it. Just lean on it, because these 5 guys are playing spectacular, even through those 2 losses, and they were spectacular for a 3rd game in a row. 79.7 overall grade as a unit, only allowed 4 pressures all day. and they were really good in the run game too. This offensive line, Ryman, Nelson, Kelly, Fries, Smith. Not too many offensive line firsts that you can name all 5 guys just right off rip like that, but they're all really, really good. They're all really, really good. These are star players up front. This is the best unit on the Colts team, and they've overtaken the Saints as the highest graded offensive line in football. Even in their losses, they were running the ball well. They were protecting Anthony Richardson well, and he just needs to make the throws when he can make them. This offensive line, they have to live and die with it. It's one of the best units, if not the best unit in football. All 5 guys are playing extremely well. I thought it was fitting, the play that sealed the game. They have 3 tight ends on the right side. They run power, and they pull Quentin Nelson around to blow up a corner to get the final first down to seal it. We are seeing all 5 guys on their line play well, and that's, again, that's the formula. They're waiting on Richardson to get better with the accuracy. You're going to go over that. Jonathan Taylor had a really nice day, but this offensive line gives them a chance to survive. It may be the best unit in football right now.
See, and my stat that told the story is sort of building off of yours, because I think the Colts should have won this game by more. The Colts should have won this game by more. This should have been a decisive Colts victory, and the reason it wasn't, in my opinion, is because of Anthony Richardson's struggles. And I hate to turn a positive into a negative here, but the Colts are just going to sort of live and die with Richardson. And the Bears did not play well in this game. The offensive line did not play well. I don't think Shane Waldron had a great game as offensive coordinator. It's been a struggle for him to start this season. This should have been a bigger Indianapolis Colts win. And the reason why it wasn't is it's because of Richardson. It's because of his inefficiencies and inconsistencies. 2 turnover-worthy plays for him out of just 20 attempts. And one of those turnover-worthy plays isn't even the throw to the back of the end zone to Ashton Doolin, which was tipped, so technically we don't call it a turnover-worthy play, but I think it's Jaquan Brisker who's literally staring at him. And if that pass actually got to the back of the end zone, I'm pretty sure that Jaquan Brisker is just going to pick the pass off because he was standing right there staring at it. So that could have been 3 turnover-worthy plays in 20 attempts, 64.7 adjusted completion percentage. You and I have talked about this with Richardson. All the talent in the world, truly. A 5-tool player, as they say in baseball, we'll say that for the NFL as well, what he could be as the quarterback. I am worried about touch with him because I don't know if that's something that he's ever going to develop. When I scout quarterbacks, accuracy is certainly one thing, ball placement is another, touch is something that is different. Accuracy can be taught through repetition. You run enough routes with the same wide receiver, you could be accurate with them. You could put, at least NFL quarterback should be. You should be able to put the ball exactly where you need to when a guy is running a certain route. Ball placement's a little bit different. That's a little bit more natural. That's okay. Well, I'm a little bit off platform on this route. The wide receiver maybe got bumped a little bit out of his release. The timing's a little bit different, but I'm still putting the ball exactly where it needs to when my receiver needs to be there to catch it. Touch is often a natural ability. It's really hard to teach it. And when you look at Anthony Richardson's game right now, touch is the biggest detractor of his passing success. The misses to A.D. Mitchell that we've seen all season long, just sailing that pass over the head of, I think it was Alec Pierce, when he was going to the sideline, that ended up being one of those turnover-worthy plays. And even the touch that it looked like he was going to put on that Doolin pass, it's just not there for him right now. And with a guy who's got a cannon of an arm, accuracy and ball placement and touch only become more important the stronger arm you have. Because the stronger arm you have, the more trouble you could get into. And so for Anthony Richardson, that is the big issue for me. They should have won this game by a lot more. He's missing open receivers that could have led to, at the very least, field goals, let alone touchdowns. And he's simply missing them because he does not have the touch on passes. Reading defenses, being a better decision maker, all that stuff, that can come with time with Richardson. But I do get worried about the overall touch. Is that ever really going to be the part of his game that elevates to a level it needs to for him to have that consistency, for the Colts to get what they need to out of him to be a playoff and potential Super Bowl quarterback? I hope it is, because he's one of the most fun players in the league. But that is an area that even in this win, to me, that's the stat that told the story, because the Colts should have won this game by more. And unfortunately, I think he was the reason why they did.
The other thing that stands out to me, and I like that you brought up the interception that he sailed on the corner over Pierce, is because to me, the other thing I see in accuracy is so much about footwork and having your entire having your entire body in sync. And there's too many throws to me that he makes where his feet just aren't set.
And we could teach that, right? Like we can get to a point where we can fix the footwork for him. So maybe there's a couple of throws in here.
Look, Trevor Lawrence had to go through the same process.
And a lot of young QBs do.
Yeah, they do. Footwork is so much about it. And that's the first thing when I see a quarterback that's inaccurate, that's the first thing I look at is his feet, not even his release or his process or anything. I go, where are his feet at? I watched Trevor Lawrence. Doug Peterson went in there, and it took him a couple of months, but he went in there and he had to fix Trevor Lawrence's footwork, right? And that's how they went on that second half run in 2022. There's so many guys that I look at. I look at Sam Darnold right now. His footwork is so much better than it ever was back when he was with the Jets. It's not even close. That's why he's more accurate now, right? Richardson, that's what I see on top of everything you're saying, because you're absolutely right. It's just too many throws when his feet are just not set, or he's kind of doing it's not consistent. What you want is a consistent base. The great quarterbacks throw it the same way. Tom Brady went every summer and worked on his mechanics every summer because he needed them consistent, right? You have to be able to throw the football the same way every single time. The off-platform stuff, yes, it's great, and I know Mahomes can do it and certain guys can do it. But 90% of the time, you need to be able to throw the football with the same mechanics from the ground all the way up every time, and I don't see Richardson doing that right now. That's going to take some time, and Shane Steichen needs to work on that with them, or the accuracy won't get better.
Colts fans, if you're mad at us because we're taking a win that you had and we're talking about a negative there, both of our most impressives come from the Indianapolis Colts. So, Dalton, who is your most impressive in this game?
The good news is their defense was a hell of a lot better in this game. And right now they're using him as a rotational pass rusher, but how good was Leatu Latu in this game? You talk about a 78.1 pass rush grade, 5 pressures, a big strip sack of Caleb Williams late in the game, 21.4% pass rush win rate. This is what they were looking for. And for as much as I would like to see him on the field more, if he's going to capitalize when he's given the opportunities, then fantastic. And right now, if he's one of the best rotational edge rushers in the league, so be it. Latu was fantastic. There's a reason he was taken. He was the first defensive player taken in this draft. Just a terrific day. And if this is his role and he's going to maximize it, then the Colts are going to get a lot better as we keep moving forward in the front seven.
For my most impressive, I'm going to call out my dumbass because before this game started, we were watching the warm-ups for this game. And I tweeted out, I said, I knew things were bad injury-wise in Indy's secondary because they've gone through some injuries here. I had no idea they were, quote, starting cornerback wearing number 40 kind of bad. And that is Jalen Johnson. And all due respect to Jalen Johnson, I did not realize that Jalen Johnson was wearing... Sorry, Jalen Jones.
Johnson's the other side.
Right. Yeah. I did not realize that Jalen Jones was wearing number 40. He wore 17 for Texas A&M. I watched him, and I scouted him out of Texas A&M. So him wearing 17 in my head at A&M, I was like, there's no way Jalen Jones would be wearing number 40. So it did not even click to me. But he said, who the hell is Trevor Sikkema anyways in this game? And he went ahead and read that tweet. I don't know if he did, but he got 2 interceptions basically to call me out for it. So my most impressive is Jalen Jones, wearing number 40, overcoming the ugly corner number, and still getting 2 interceptions because of it.
That was fun to watch yesterday, especially when he got the second interception and you just had to slouch in the chair and be like, well, I have to address this now. This is out in the open. No, yeah, what do you got against guys wearing 40s? Huh? Didn't Terrence Newman used to wear, 41?
I'm not saying – look, Marlon Humphrey wears 44, right? I mean,
great player.
I'm not saying that, it's impossible. But as a big aesthetic guy, jersey number aesthetic guy, I hate outside corners wearing numbers in the 40s. Can't stand it.
Some of them were single digits.
It's a safety number. It's a fullback number. Right. You got single digits to choose from now. If you're a corner, you could pick a single digit number, and you're out here wearing a number in the 40s?
I saw a college corner.
What are we doing?
I saw a college corner a year or 2 ago wearing number 98.
Yeah, see, that's not cool. It's an abomination of the sport. It's gross.
You want the old limits back that they still could
kids these days.
They still could have worn the 40s.
What happened to the game I love?
Hey, it's working.
Who's your most disappointing?
Maybe we need more of them. I think this is the second week in a row I've done this, and this is as we get into more of these games and a few of these here. This is a theme. The Bears are not good enough to win without balance. Trevor and their running backs had 25 carries for 59 yards yesterday, and only 9 yards before contact. The Bears will go nowhere. I don't care how good Caleb Williams is or how many yards he throws for or how many Hail Marys he almost completes. If they can't run the ball and it starts getting cold in Chicago, they are not winning ball games. They're just not. They are 30th in the league in rush yards per game right now. They're 28th in rushing grade. They're 22nd in run blocking grade. If they don't find balance, and I'm about to say this is the first of like 5 teams I'm about to say this with today, if they don't find balance, they are going nowhere. They will be in last place this year.
Yeah.
Because they brought in DeAndre Swift, and they have Khalil Herbert, and they have Roshan Johnson.
Right.
And Caleb Williams can run a little bit. If they don't find any sort of run game,
right,
they're going to be a mess. That's just where I'm at with this. And again, they are not the only team in football like this. There's several teams right now that are just not running the ball, and obviously we're seeing defenses sit back, and they have struggling quarterbacks and things of that nature. Look, Caleb may be great. He will be able to carry them one day. Today is not that day. Next week is not that day. If they are incapable of running the football, they have a huge problem.
Yeah, and, my most disappointing, I have Bears offensive coordinator Shane Waldron because I hated some of the calls that I saw yesterday. But honestly, just echoing sort of what you said, it might just be a overall Chicago Bears offensive line problem. Like, that might be the most disappointing because I'm wondering at this point, Shane Waldron, he calls a speed option on 4th and 1 at the goal line.
And the play,
right?
Can I say something? The play before that, 3rd and 1 from the 1 also.
Yeah.
They ran like inside zone right up the gut. They had DeAndre Carter lined up at tight end, blocking somebody off the edge 90 pounds heavier than him. The play before that. And
it's not great.
He got put on a sled into the lap of whichever back it was running for the Bears at 2 plays in a row there. I saw that. That was more shocking to me than the speed option.
Well, that's the thing is, like, which one is it? Is Shane Waldron calling bad plays? Because there was another situation.
I can't have DeAndre.
Like on 3rd and 9,
I cannot have DeAndre Carter blocking an edge.
No,
player.
obviously not. And he on 3rd and 9 later in the game, they're throwing a tight end screen sort of like out towards the sideline, and guess what? It didn't pick up the first down. It barely picked up 2 yards. Like, okay, you're just surrendering things at that point. You're throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage when it's already a 3rd and 9. Like, you're not even giving your guys a chance at that point. Even if you have numbers at that side, it's just such a difficult play to convert. And so I didn't like a lot of the Shane Waldron calls, but the more I thought of it, it's like, is he calling these because the offensive line's that bad? Like, we just have a major offensive line issue in Chicago?
I think that could be the case with the screen that you mentioned.
Because, well, the screen, but also the speed option part. Does he say to himself, okay, we're at 4th and 1 on the goal line. I can't run it up the middle. I just tried to run it up the middle, and it didn't work. So let's try to get it out to the sideline. So he's catching a lot of heat. And I have him down here as my most disappointing because I just didn't love the calls here from Chicago. But I am willing to admit that he's probably at fault. So is this offensive line.
I think this is a full tilt offensive problem because let's be real, they're a Will Levis backhand from being 0-3.
Yeah,
they're all the way around.
When you put it that way,
it's not just Caleb. They are maybe the dumbest play of the year from being 0-3. And I think they have a full tilt offensive problem. Keenan Allen's out with injury. Mm-hmm. I watched them. I don't
Rome
think
played well.
Rome
Dunze played well.
Dunze had his best game yet, and I don't think they have a whole lot of speed either. I don't think they're the fastest team by any means that we have in the NFL. I think there's a multitude of offensive problems right now for the Bears, and the first half of their schedule is easier than their second half. They better figure it out soon.
Packers-Titans, next game that we're getting to. Green Bay wins this one. Speaking of Will Levis, just great transition, Dalton. Excellent work. Packers win this one 30-14. If Will Levis won, it would have been a better transition. But let's take a look at the top graded players on Green Bay. Jair Alexander tops the list. 89.2. He had a pick 6 in this one. Shout out Will Levis again. Defensive tackle Devontae Wyatt, next highest graded is 78.7. Edge rusher Preston Smith with a 77.3. Running back Josh Jacobs with a 77.0. And then running back Emmanuel Wilson, I feel like maybe one of the best surprise players of the early season here. 76.7 in this one. Malik Willis, 75.9. Speaking of guys that have been really great surprises so far here, 3 weeks into the year, Malik Willis. And I know we'll dig into him in a little bit. Tennessee Titans, their top-graded players, DeAndre Hopkins, with number 1 on the list with a 79.0. Offensive tackle J.C. Latham, the rookie, with a 75.6. Defensive tackle Tavondre Sweat with an 86.0. Guard Peter Skoronski with a 66.6. And the defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons with a 66.6 as well. Will Levis, yeah, again, not a great day. 54.7 overall grade for Will Levis. What's the stat that told the story here, Dalton?
I think once again with the Titans, it's been the same thing every week. It's turnovers, and I know a couple of them were later, 3 turnovers, but that the Jair Alexander pick 6, that throw was just about as egregious as the turnovers that he had in the first 2 games. I mean, he just got baited into a throw by one of the best corners in football. It makes the game 17-7. Brian Callahan gets away from any sort of script that they would have had. They only ran 9 design run plays the entire game, even though 17-7 in the second quarter is not insurmountable. So you get away from the run game. They only ran 18 plays in the first half. This very much, in a similar sense, went just like the Packers game against the Colts went last week. Yes, the Packers ran the ball well. Yes, I'll get into their run game in a second, but they held the ball. Malik Willis played well, all of that stuff. But the Titans also just did not sustain drives, and the turnovers, it's just killing them. You can't have a back-breaking, game-changing turnover every single week. And I just wonder, I don't know if they pull the plug. I don't know if you let a young kid ride through it. But they're not just mistakes. They're back-breaking mistakes. That pick 6, the game was 10-7, and the Titans had looked okay up to that point. The first drive was good. They just cannot continue to have Levis make back-breaking mistakes that turn football games upside down, because it's 3 weeks in a row with this, and that's. For as much as the Packers were going to be conservative, what is the one way the Packers could really run away with this game? It's turnovers, and you're just handing them points. So I don't know how much longer Tennessee, if they get more mistakes like that, they can live with this.
I hear what you're saying. I don't know. My stat that told the story is you live and die by Will Levis, and I think that's the story of this season, because I don't really see a need to go to Mason Rudolph. Like, he's not your franchise quarterback. Maybe Will Levis still is. Now, he's struggling mightily right now, but that's sort of who Levis is, right? He's this big-armed quarterback. He's going to give you the highs and the lows. He's very much on the Jameis Winston type of spectrum here of types of quarterbacks that we have in this league. He is that archetype of a player where you just got to live with those highs and the lows. I think back to the Jameis 30-30 season that he had, where people every single week, it was different. Oh, turnover-worthy plays mattered most. Oh, big-time throws mattered most. And it was just wins and losses all over the place for the Buccaneers. And obviously you move on because you just can't handle that inconsistency after, I think that was year 4 for Jameis.
That sounds right.
It must have been either 4 or 5 from him, because it was right at the end of his rookie season, and they opted to not re-sign him.
I thought it was year 5. I think it might have been
4.
5.
So at that point, you had enough evidence to make that decision.
And Tom Brady was on the table.
And Tom Brady obviously
that helps.
Yeah, he was on the horizon. But with Will Levis, he does some good things for you, but obviously it's just it's the up and down. 15 explosive plays is 11th in the NFL in the pass game. So he has that going for him. But the turnover-worthy plays, the 5 turnover-worthy plays, that's 4th in the league. So he's on the high end of the spectrum of both of these things. Unless you get in a situation where the locker room really starts to turn on you, I don't think you move on from him. I think you just, if there is no point if the locker room still loves Will Levis, even through the highs and the lows and some of these crushing losses, I think you just stick with him this year. What is going to Mason Rudolph going to do for
nothing.
you? You're not going to make the playoffs.
I think
nothing's going to happen there. All you do is you maybe get a better draft pick, but even if that's the case, who's going to give you the higher draft pick? Feels like Will Levis at this point.
Could be. I mean, if he keeps turning the ball over like this, yeah. And regardless, I think games like this, in these first 3 games, it feels like each week we inch closer towards talking about who they're taking next year, right? Coming out of the draft, and it's a weird class, and we're trying to figure out who the top quarterback is. But we start to think about that because and look, Will Levis was the first pick of the second round, was it? So you don't have like the 5th-year option and all this stuff to worry about. It's a lot easier to move on from a guy when he's not a first-round pick. I think the more games that we see like this, the more we have that conversation with the Titans. And right now, look, facts are facts. They're the only team that's played 3 games that doesn't have a win. And it's because and they've all been – this game wasn't as close because it got away from them earlier. But the first 2 were very winnable. Yeah, and it is the reason that they've lost these games.
And you get the win probably if Mason Rudolph plays in week 1. I'll give you that. I just don't think it does anything for your franchise.
It
so
doesn't.
unless you are losing the locker room, I think this is your dude. So we'll see moving forward. Most impressive, who you got?
Packers run game again.
Yeah, we got to talk about the Packers.
It's just
the
the Packers. Look, 188 rush yards as a group, 9 missed tackles forced. We saw both running backs in the top 5 for them this week, Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson. Wilson's a great story right now, and giving them, with A.J. Dillon out for the season, giving them that second back that they need so Josh Jacobs isn't getting 40 carries a game. And you know the one thing I like, okay, remember I went last week on my whole rant about, okay, the Packers all of a sudden are a gap scheme team now, right? And we're running power and counter, we're pulling guards, we're doing all these things, and we just made a whole new offense, right? Trev, you ever see those people that like they tell you they're going on some diet and they do it for like 3 weeks and then they're just like, nah, not for me. I'm good.
Yes.
Apparently that's Matt LaFleur. Because now this week he goes right back to 63.
Now he's getting in shape.
Yeah. Well, no, they've been in shape regardless. I ain't worried about the Packers being in shape right now. But he goes now. All of that and all the messing around for 2 weeks with gap schemes and last week with all this fun stuff. Now it's like, all right, we're not fooling everybody again. Let's just go with the bread and butter now. And they go back to 63% zone runs, and you see read options because you can do that sort of thing with Malik Willis, and you see the zone runs working, and it's 5.1 yards per carry, and it's just like okay, we just went right back now to who we are after experimenting and actually having it work for a couple of weeks. And now you might have both things in their arsenal in that offense, and to win these 2 games without Jordan Love because of this run game. I mean, what else can you say about Willis, about the run game, about the way LaFleur has coached these 2 games? I think they're 2 of the best games he's ever coached, first of all. And honestly, I think through 2 weeks, I think these 2 wins they've gotten with Malik Willis are the 2 most consequential wins that we have seen so far from any team. They could have crashed and been done and been 0-3 or worse and waiting on Jordan Love to get back. This could have been awful. Mm-hmm. This could have been that knee injury to Jordan Love could have just ruined their whole season. And Malik Willis and Matt LaFleur and this run game have saved it with the strategizing, and then just the execution's been flawless, honestly. Get a big early turnover, the pick 6 on defense, but they just flipped to a style of ball that was going to work for these 2 weeks. And now you're probably going to get Jordan Love back next week, and now you start looking like the Packers, the way they were supposed to look. These are 2 huge wins, and if they make a deep playoff run or even a Super Bowl run this year, they're going to look back at these 2 wins as a very crucial part of their season.
I think that's a really good call out. It's the meme, the never let them know your next move meme, and that's the Packers run game right now, and it's working to perfection for them. My most impressive, it has to be Malik Willis. You know, Matt LaFleur talked after the game. They're not putting a million things on this guy's plate. They don't need him to throw the ball 30, 40 times a game. But he's exactly what they need right now. And he is letting a good offense and a good offensive line and a good game plan specifically speak for this offense. But I don't mean that to downplay how he has played either, right? Because when you think about a guy like Malik Willis, okay, he's got his rushing ability. He's still green on experience at the NFL level. Let's make things easy for him, right? Let's give him the RPO options. Let's give him some play action options. 12 of his 26 dropbacks this past week included RPO or play action. But Dalton, of the 14 that did not have RPO or play action attached to it, that was his highest passing grade. His highest passing grade was actually on true, regular-ass drop-back sets. Get there, go to the first read, go to the second read, 80.3 passing grade with a big-time throw and no turnover-worthy plays. So it is not just the fact that Matt LaFleur is a great offensive mind. He is not making this like the simplest offense for Malik Willis to run. There are times when they ask him to be a drop-back passer, to scan the field, to know where receivers are going to be, that you only met 3 weeks ago. And you're doing it in NFL action now. And you're preparing for a different defense every single week. And Malik has done so beautifully. Again, I thought my talking point here with Malik Willis was going to be, oh, they're making it so much easier for him. They're simplifying everything. It is easier when the run game is going as well as it is for the Packers.
And those receivers are that good. When you have that many receivers that get themselves open.
But he is very much operating this offense in multiple facets. And you love to see that from Malik Willis. My most disappointing really quick in this game, Titans run game. You know, you talk about how great the Packers run game was. Titans run game just so far this season. Back-to-back weeks of over 130 yards rushing in week 1 and week 2, which is not bad. The grades weren't super high, but at least the overall production was there. Only 33 rushing yards in week 3. That will never be a recipe for a Will Levis team to win a football game. This team was predicated on running the football over the last couple of years. Now, I know Derrick Henry's not in the building, right? It's not the same team that it was when Mike Vrabel was the head coach. But for that to be so much of an identity for you, and then really not something that you can lean on at all. That's a piece of this puzzle that if that doesn't get better, the Levis situation is not going to get better anyway. So they've got to surround him with a better run.
Well, and they only called 9 running plays in this game.
Yeah,
you just can't go away from it.
It wasn't there.
Team number 2 on the list here, and there's a couple more coming, of they will not win without balance. That's Tennessee. Real quick for me, most disappointing. They lost Azeez Al-Shire in the offseason. They went and got Kenneth Murray Jr. And you're hoping for maybe new bit of scenery, get away from the Chargers and what they had going, Brandon Staley, and maybe improve. So, but it's still kind of struggling in run defense. And I know again the Packers' run game has been really good, but 45.8 run D grade in this game, 29.4 for the season is last in the NFL among all linebackers. Kenneth Murray still trying to figure it out in run defense, and it's tough because you got a good guy next to him in Ernest Jones too. But just still trying to figure it out even in a new location, and hopefully he can by the end of the season, because they look, Tavondre Sweat and some of those defensive linemen are playing well up front, and we're just seeing, look, and the funny part to me too, real quick on the Titans, 5 highest graded players in this game, right? Hopkins, Latham, Sweat, Skoronski, and Simmons. If those 5 guys are their highest graded players in a game, you would think they're winning. I mean, but it's just the core around it needs to be better, and Murray, especially behind Sweat in that D line, it's a problem right now. They really was struggling to see where he was going yesterday against the Packers.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ernest Jones, who they are even lucky to have, right? Getting him from the Rams right before the season started. So, all right, we're talking Bucs Broncos next, but before we get there, TDs, tutties, taken to the house in for 6, whatever you want to call a touchdown. One thing is for sure, touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Whether it's on the ground, in the air, special teams, defense, we don't care how they score them. We just want to bet touchdowns. That's it. And DraftKings Sportsbook, that's the number one place to bet touchdowns this season. If you are ready to place your first bet, you try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown, right? If you see a matchup, if you think it's going to be high scoring, if you think that something's got, like a player's got a really great matchup, obviously we do the preview shows here on Thursday. If you hear one of the matchups that myself or Carmen mentions and you go, yes, I think that player is absolutely going to dominate the day, throw some cheddar on there. Say they're going to score a touchdown. It's very easy. New DraftKings customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. You can score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the promo code PFF. That is promo code PFF for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, you can call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY, or you just text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, visit dkng.co/FTBALL. Broncos Bucks. Painful one for your boy, Dalton.
Trap game? We kind of
very clearly a trap game, but it shouldn't have been. And I'll get to that. You know what? I'm going to get to that immediately after we do the top 5 because I got to get into it. Denver wins this one, 26-7. Let's take a look at the top 5 for the Denver Broncos because I got to get into my point here. Safety Brandon Jones for the Denver Broncos, 92.8 grade in this one. Cornerback Riley Moss, a 91.1. Linebacker Cody Barton had an 83.5. Guard Quinn Miners, 76.7, and then wide receiver Cortland Sutton with a 75.6. Bo Nix in this game, his best game so far as a pro, 72.9. And on Tampa side of things, cornerback Zion McCollum, he is playing well to start this season, an elite 90.8 overall grade. They needed him, but clearly they needed a lot more guys as well. Offensive tackle Tristan Wirfs, 85.2 in this grade. Cornerback Tyke Smith, the rookie slot defender, he had a really good day, almost had an interception himself, 85.0 grade in this one. Wide receiver Chris Godwin with a 74.6, and then rookie center Graham Barton with a 74.3. Baker Mayfield, I believe his lowest graded game.
60. He was in a similar range last week.
Yeah.
It's close.
I should have double-checked that before I brought it up. Good job, Trev. 60.6 grade is what he had here for Baker Mayfield. I talked about, you brought up, this could be a trap game. It really shouldn't be, because I'm just going to zoom right to my most disappointing, and that's Todd Bowles in this game. And I think Todd Bowles is fine. He's a great defensive coach. He's had some masterful defensive game plans during his NFL career. Sean Payton has this dude's number like you wouldn't believe. Evan Winters, who's the NFL editor for A to Z Sports, he tweeted this out. Sean Payton, when he goes up against Todd Bowles in the regular season, since Todd Bowles has been a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization in 2019, Sean Payton is 7-0. His offense has averaged 29.7 points per game. 6 out of the 7 games, he has scored more than 26 points, and 5 out of the 7 have gone for more than 31 points. He has now beaten Todd Bowles with Drew Brees, Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, and now Bo Nix. Sean Payton has Todd Bowles figured out. And it's terrifying that there is somehow that successful of a blueprint, because we were watching that game, right? And we watched the beginning of that game and we go, all right, so they're just going to play press man and get burned all day? Because that first drive, it felt like Tampa was just calling press man coverage, and Sean Payton had the answers. And then the second that Todd Bowles went to off cover 3 or off quarters, they had the answers for it. He was one step ahead of Todd Bowles.
10-yard outs.
This entire game, he was one step ahead of Todd Bowles. And it's sort of one of those games where I think Bowles got up to the podium afterwards, and he's like, outplayed us, outcoached us, out-effort, everything. Like, it was just the Denver Broncos were better, and they absolutely were, and I think it was in the coaching category as well, so that was the most disappointing. But stat that told the story. What is it for you?
I'm going to take the Bucs offensive angle as kind of stat that told and most impressive, and kind of I'm just going to do my whole Bucs bit right now because it's pretty much all tied together. Baker Mayfield, average depth of target, 3.5 yards, lowest of his career. The Broncos defensively said, we're going to put Surtain on Mike Evans, and the rest of us, we're going to sit back and just not make any mistakes and make tackles in front of us, and you're just not going to make big plays. And the Bucs just responded by going, okay, then we won't. That's pretty much how it went. 3.5 yard average depth. He only threw 3 passes over 10 air yards. 1 for 3 with an interception. Mike Evans had 2 catches for 17. Surtain did a really nice job on him. Longest pass play of the day, only went 13 yards, and it'll tie in most impressive in coverage. You saw Brandon Jones there with the interception. Riley Moss was really good with the pass breakup. Patrick Surtain had a quiet day, but that's because they kind of shadowed him on Evans for a good chunk of it. Not every single play, but a good chunk of it, and it was just kind of locked down. Surtain.
Nobody plays Deion Sanders coverage anymore.
Only Deion Sanders does.
But that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, nobody plays, all right, Deion, you're guarding this guy every single snap. Yeah. And he goes, okay.
Yeah, no. The only one who does do that is Deion Sanders at Colorado, but I'll save that for tomorrow.
Player coach?
Yeah.
And
then just the Bucs, look, if you've got the Broncos sitting back and you're going to have an answer, you would think, okay, let's run the football. Our offensive line's getting better, we think, right? And my most disappointing is just Rachaad White. 11 touches, 35 yards, and on the season, he's at 2.1 yards per carry. It sure looks like through 3 games that Bucky Irving's just going to take over this job, because he had 70 rushing yards yesterday. Big run that started to light a spark. I think that might have to be a thing. But altogether, the Bucs just complete inability to make big plays in this game because of the way the Broncos were playing in coverage, and then inability to adjust off of that and maybe run the ball or do something different. It was just a complete just stall on the part of the Bucs, and they need to find a way to get Mike Evans the ball more. They need to scheme that up. He's got 120 yards in 3 games. Don't put your 1,000-yard streak in danger now either.
Yeah,
you can't. Don't endanger the streak.
That's what matters
I know.
most.
Look, I said it through the first 2 games, and he was our leading receiver again. Chris Godwin has been fantastic, but still Mike Evans out there.
The list of Buccaneer priority accomplishments every season: win the Super Bowl. Mike Evans gets 1,000.
Are we sure about that? That's the order? Because you just recently got a Super Bowl.
But that's what I'm saying. No, but that's the goal every season, right? For every team, no matter what, until you get eliminated, the number 1 goal is to win the Super Bowl. Number 2 is Mike Evans 1,000 yards.
Yeah,
not even win the division.
We're off to a slow
win
start.
The division.
Slow start with that one.
Mike Evans needs to get the 1,000 yards. Zach Tantillo, our head of social media, is a Bo Nix defender. He's an Auburn guy, so lifelong Bo Nix fan here. I made a deal with him that said if I say good things about Bo Nix, then he'll promote the show more so we get more viewers. So here you go, Zach.
As if it's not his job anyway.
I know, I'm just messing with him. So Bo Nix is my stat that told the story in this one. And honestly, it's the confidence of Bo Nix in this game. You go through 2 games, they were not good, right? Big time struggles. They were 2 games that looked about as poor from Bo Nix since the Auburn days. Again, sorry, Zach. But during his time at Oregon, the thing that always stood out to me about Bo Nix is that he was confident. right? It was that confidence in the offense that he played in for those entire 2 years that he was there. And the second year was even better than the first because of the familiarity that he had. The first 2 weeks of the NFL season, they were rough. And I was joking about this when we were watching the game up in the office. It's like, oh, I didn't know Bo Nix was allowed to get better. I thought that we were supposed to kick him out of the NFL or something because that's how everybody was talking about him. Oh, Bo Nix is terrible. He's a bust. He'll never be good. We got to calm down, man. Give these guys a little bit of time. Now, again, it's Sean Payton. He knows Todd Bowles really well, and so it's a good game. Obviously, we got the track record there, but Nix played well. You see it on the screen. 2 big-time throws, only 1 turnover-worthy play, and adjusted completion percentage a lot closer to what it looked like in the Oregon days at a 78.1, and the bottom number right there is the one that I love the most, Dalton. 0 sacks in this game, despite being pressured 6 times. You talk about sacks sometimes being a quarterback stat, right? It can be an offensive lineman stat. If you get whooped up immediately before the quarterback even has time to end his 5 or 7 step drop or even get to a second progression, if they're in your face within 2 seconds of when the ball is snapped, that's an offensive lineman sack. That is on the offensive line. But if you're hanging on to the ball a little bit too long, if you're somebody who's sort of like running into these pressure sacks, sometimes sacks can genuinely be a quarterback stat. Nix being pressured 6 times in this game, yet having 0 sacks, just shows the confidence that he is getting and how much more familiar he is becoming with an NFL pocket, understanding how much time he has there. And they say the eyes in the back of your head, right? The feel for when guys are trying to either punch the ball out or bring you down one way or the other. Nix had a better feel in week 3 than he did in week 1 than he did in week 2. And it's a little bit of a progression, but it was great to see from the young rookie in Nix, who obviously a matchup that his head coach knows very well. But that confidence he played with was fun because I do think that Bo Nix can be an NFL quarterback when he plays with that kind of confidence. So it was nice to see that in an NFL uniform.
For sure. I think one thing that stuck out to me too, 47 rushing yards in this game. I thought in the preseason one of the things that he brought was his mobility and his ability to either create out on the move or just take off running. We didn't see a whole lot of that in the first 2 games. And again, I think you can be as decisive when running as a quarterback, like I just mentioned with Fields, as you are as a passer. And I think there were moments in this game where it was like, you know what, just keep it, take my 8 yards, and we'll move to the next play. You did see a lot more of Nix of what we saw in the preseason in this game and at Oregon for that matter, and we'll even throw it all the way back to Auburn, although we'd like to see more of the Oregon stuff. You just saw, you're right, confidence is key, and with Nix, it's always about timing and decision-making, and just one turnover-worthy play, too, is good to see after a couple weeks where it was pretty uncharacteristic with him giving the football away.
Most impressive?
Broncos secondary.
Okay.
Just lit it up. Same thing. Just lit up the Bucs. Just no big plays. Longest pass allowed, 13 yards. Brandon Jones with the big interception early. Surtain locking down Mike Evans. Just the entire effort of Denver just shutting down big plays from the Bucs was huge for their defense. It allowed their offense to work from ahead.
My most impressive, Courtland Sutton. Really nice day from Courtland Sutton. Whether he was going up against Jamel Dean or Ty McCollum or whoever it was, I felt like he was having a really big day. Caught 7 of 11 targets for 68 yards. Most important stat that I like here about Courtland Sutton, he's got to be a contested catch guy at the sideline. 3 out of 5 of his contested catches, he was able to haul in. That's the identity that I need you to have for this team. Because Nix, as he learns what NFL Open really is, and it's a lot tighter than it is in college, sometimes you just got to throw it up to your guys that are good contested catch players, and Courtland Sutton being able to prove that this weekend, I think was really good for Nix. Most disappointing for you before we move on to the next game.
I had Rashad White. I don't know if it's call it running back controversy now, if Bucky Irving's going to take over as the starter, but I think either way, they really need both of these guys to be somewhat productive. You can't have – Irving's not the type of guy that's going to be out there every snap and getting 35 touches, I don't think. But they need more from White. They need more from Mike Evans. There's just certain players on this offense they need more from right now.
Giants at Browns. Sorry to our producer, Tyler, who has to listen to this show as we are producing it. Noted Browns fan. This one might not be pretty for you. 21-15 win for the New York Giants. So if the show stream goes off, you guys know why. Cleveland. Let's start with the. Actually, no. Let's start with the Giants.
Get the winners going.
Yeah, we got a winner stay on. Winner stay on here. So we'll start with the New York Giants. Brian Burns. You love to see him at the top of the list. 89.7. You were expecting a big impact from him. We haven't seen it yet. We did in this game. DT Dexter Lawrence coming in with an 87.5 at number 2. Wide receiver Malik Neighbors. I believe I read wide receiver 1 in fantasy so far 3 weeks in. He's number 3 on this list, 83.8. Linebacker Micah McFadden with an 82.3. And then safety Jason Pinnock with an 82.2. Daniel Jones in this game, better, but not great, 49.7. Cleveland Browns, Myles Garrett, surprise, surprise, at the top of the list, 92.6. Linebacker Jordan Hicks with an 83.5. Defensive tackle Shelby Harris with a 78.7. Wide receiver Amari Cooper, a 78.4. Cornerback Denzel Ward coming back from that shoulder injury, 76.1. Deshaun Watson earning a 51.5 grade from the quarterback. What's the stat that told the story here for you, Dalton?
All right, here's team number 3 that is unable to win without balance. Browns, 16 design carries, 42 rushing yards on those 16 carries.
Are you surprised at this point that they didn't make some sort of a move for a running back this offseason?
Well, here's the problem. It's not just running back now.
Well, the offensive line, continue.
For years and years, we saw the Browns with a big-time offensive line, and last year a little bit of injury, but they were still good. 43.1 run blocking grade in this game. Right now, they are last in the NFL in EPA per rush on first down. They are 21st in run blocking grade. Their offensive line is 28th in overall grade. It's a veteran offensive line at a lot of spots. They still have injuries going at offensive tackle.
Right.
If this starts breaking down up front, and now they can't even block it, like if they're gonna not block to the point where it doesn't even matter if Nick Chubb comes back healthy or not, I don't know where to go with this offense.
Well, and clearly it's not going to be a Deshaun Watson solved problem, and I think that they were certainly hoping that when they gave him the fully guaranteed contract, because that's my most disappointing here. We're getting out of the way early, Tyler, I promise. When you look at the Browns offense, EPA per play, they are 32nd in the NFL. Penalties, I mean, we're just going beyond the offense as well. Penalties, 29 total, second in the NFL. Drops, first in the NFL with 10. Pressures allowed, going back to the offensive line, 53. That's first. This is just a non-functioning football team right now.
So the Panthers. Let's just real quick, take the Panthers, and it was like, okay, it felt pretty clear through the first 2 games that maybe a QB switch would work, and we're going to get there, and it did. Through 3 games, the Browns are actually, maybe other than even Miami, but that's an injury thing. The Browns are the team right now on offense that I look at and I go, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know. I don't have an answer. It's a scheme thing. If their offensive line now, and that's a really talented defensive line they're playing with the Giants. So, but even said, that's the one way the Giants were going to win this game was their D-line dominating, and they absolutely dominated. And I right now don't. If you ask me, hey, how do you fix the Browns? What do you do? I don't have an answer. I think it's panic mode now for this offense.
PFF legend Austin Gale tweeted this out on Sunday night. Deshaun, you know the Cleveland Browns meme. It's the jersey with all of the names crossed out, right? And it's just people just editing. So think of all of the quarterbacks that have played for the Cleveland Browns since 2000. Okay, Deshaun Watson's EPA per dropback in weeks 1 through 3 is the worst of any Browns quarterback since 2000 to start a season.
How much worse would this game have been if the Giants didn't fumble the opening kickoff? I mean, this is where we're at with this offense now, and this was a game. I think we were looking at this game going, okay, the Browns should pull off a win. We think they're good enough to do this and at least make enough stops and win another. But they've scored, I think offensively, they've scored 13, 14, and 15 points in these 3 games.
Yeah, and the ball in Deshaun's hands is not serviceable at all whatsoever. It's worse in the NFL. They're 32nd in the NFL in EPA per play. They can't run the football, and they're having this guy drop back, I think, more than any other quarterback. I haven't checked this week, but before going into this week, I think he had the most attempts. So you're basically looking at either you make a quarterback change or this is sort of what you're expecting. Or at least you're saying this is possible every single week, that you could lose to an offense like the Giants. All due respect to the Giants.
I don't know what to do with it. And you know what? Let's tell you what. I think we've probably made enough of the point that we're worried about the Browns offense. What did the Giants do right in this game, Trevor?
I'll tell you what the Giants did right. They actually got after the quarterback, which was great to see, right? We've talked about that over the last 2 weeks. I wanted to make sure. I've been heavy on the criticism for the Giants' defensive line, specifically Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. And so the fact that they had a great game, I'm recognizing you right here, okay? When you look at the Giants' defensive line and their pass rush win percentage, defensive tackle Elijah Chapman actually led the group. He had 18 pass rush snaps, 27.8 pass rush win percentage. Next on the list was edge rusher Brian Burns at a 15.2. Then it was Dexter Lawrence at right around 15%. And then Kayvon Thibodeau, 11.1. Okay, we'd like to see a little bit higher. But look, beggars can't be choosers at this point with Kayvon Thibodeau. The pass rush win percentage has been in single digits for too long. At least it was in double digit tier this week. That's what you need to see against an offensive line that was playing as poorly as Cleveland was. This was sort of, I didn't think that this was going to be the case going into the game. But the way that it played out, it was pretty much okay, if this group of defensive linemen for the Giants can't beat the Browns the way that they're playing along the offensive line, or at least how they played in this game, I was going to be terrified that they would get any production the rest of the season. But they were able to show up. Hats off to them. They played well. They were a big reason why the EPA per play was so low for the Browns, why they weren't able to move the football, why they were able to stop the run so well. So there you go, Giants defensive line. I've been a heavy critic of yours over the last 2 weeks. I'll give you your props for this week for a job well done.
Dominant effort. There's two reasons the Giants are going to win games: their D-line and Malik Neighbors.
That's your most impressive.
He is special. Eight catches, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. Credit ESPN for this stat. Apparently, he's the youngest wide receiver in NFL history to score 2 touchdowns in a game. 85 receiving grade. You mentioned leading, fantasy wide receiver 1?
I think somebody tweeted that out. If he's not 1, he's close.
That's because he's leading the league in targets. So the Giants have seen already through training camp, preseason, everything, that he's their best player. You could see it in the preseason already. You had a feeling. You're like, I'm pretty sure this guy's already their best player. He's got the 9th best receiving grade in the league right now. Right now, through 3 weeks, he would be the offensive rookie of the year. And he is special. I'm sure they're getting flashbacks in Jersey of Odell Beckham, because if they can just figure out everything else, almost everything else out about this offense, quarterback, O-line, other receivers, whatever, Malik Neighbors may already be one of the best receivers in football, and he showed it again. Right now, just a dynamic threat that can do anything on a football field.
Yeah, speaking of Odell Beckham Jr. flashbacks, Jalen Hyatt wearing 13. I feel like I need to quote Harry Potter for all the Harry Potter fans out there and be like, how dare you stand where he stood? How dare you wear 13?
I always mean to ask you about that with, what's his name at Florida wearing 15? What is with why?
Oh, it's an
even Richardson did too, right? Like, how do they let anyone with the Gators wear number 15?
Abomination.
How does that even work?
Embarrassing on all accounts, from all levels of decision making at the University of Florida. Bleed orange and blue over here. Nobody should wear 15.
That's kind of a theme, though, isn't it? I just wonder about that. I'm like, how do you let anyone wear number 15 in Florida?
So
how do you let anyone wear? How do you let another receiver wear 13 with the Giants? I mean, maybe Neighbors should be the one wearing it. Honestly, we'd get real flashbacks going if Neighbors was wearing it.
Yeah, and Jalen Hyatt's a speed guy, so if you wore 1, maybe be even better.
Is that another one of your aesthetic things?
Oh, 100%. If you're a speed wide receiver, deep threat wide receiver, you got to be wearing number 1. Just makes it better.
Okay. It makes him even faster than he already is?
It does. Yeah. It happens. Jersey numbers, it's a superpower. I can't explain it.
Our guy Ryan Richardson says, same with 84 on the Vikings. Nobody should wear that.
Yeah. No, it's a good call. Good call. I knew you were talking about Malik Neighbors, so I'll give the most impressive shout-out. Again, I don't know how many times I'm going to get to do this, so I will do it here on the show. Daniel Jones, most impressive. Now, he didn't set the world on fire, 0 big-time throws, but 0 turnover-worthy plays, 81.6 adjusted completion percentage for him, 20 yards rushing as well, and had 1 first down rushing. He did enough. He did enough for this team to play really well defensively, really well up front, and then won the football. He distributed it the way that he needed
against a really good defense.
Yeah, so shout out Daniel Jones. He was the most impressive in this one for how well he was able to play, staring down the barrel that is Myles Garrett coming after you and still getting out of there with a win. Ravens at Cowboys is the next game that I want to get to here. Ravens win, but it was a thriller down to the very end. 28-25 was his final score here, so the Ravens get their first win of the season. We'll start with the Ravens' top 5 graded players in this game. Center Tyler Linderbaum at the top of the list with a 91.4. Running back Derrick Henry, his best day as a member of the Baltimore Ravens with an 85.2. Tight end Isaiah Likely with a 77.5. Tight end Charlie Kohler with a 76.9. Linebacker Trenton Simpson next on the list at a 76.6, and Lamar Jackson had an 81.6 overall grade. Flipping to the other side of the Dallas Cowboys, linebacker Eric Kendricks with a 75.4. Fullback Hunter Luepke coming in at number 2 on the list at a 70.4. Love a good fullback shout out here. Running back Rico Dowdle with a 69.5. Edge rusher Michael Parsons, 69.2. Tight end Jake Ferguson with a 68.6. And then Dak Prescott had a 65.8 grade. I got to think that I don't want to say that was like falsely inflated, but Dak played better like in the fourth quarter. I felt like he was just not playing a very good game until that fourth quarter. But what's the stat that told the story here for this one that ended up being close at the end?
Theme of the day, Trevor. If you don't have balance, you're not winning. And there's very few quarterbacks in this league who are good enough to carry you week in and week out through big games like that. 15 design carries for the Cowboys, 45 yards. For as much as their run defense is a huge story, it's been bad for a couple of years. It's getting worse. It's a huge problem. The Cowboys are incapable of running the ball themselves offensively. We're hitting a point. They're 25th in run blocking grade. They're 28th in rushing grade. They're 29th in rush yards per game. Dak, if you throw in plays that were negated by penalty, Dak dropped back 64 times yesterday.
You can't win like that.
You can't win like that. The Cowboys' longest run by a running back this year is 10 yards. In 3 games, that's their longest run is 10 yards. Zeke Elliott, Rico Dowdle, Deuce Vaughn. I don't know when Dalvin Cook's getting there, but I doubt that's fixing anything. It's both sides with this. And the run D, huge story. That's all I heard on TV this morning was everyone talking about the Cowboys run D, and that's old news. I think it needs to be talked about just as much. And I know they're going to rip Dak, and Dak makes all the money, and he's supposed to this and that. Dak cannot win with this team running the ball like this.
He can't drop back 64 times.
Nobody can drop back 64. I wouldn't want Patrick Mahomes to drop back 64 times.
Well, no, not the way the defenses are playing defense now, especially with a lot of like 2 deep coverages and things like that. You don't want that.
They have a younger offensive line. They have rookies starting at 2 spots. They've been struggling with Terrence Steele at right tackle. Zach Martin's not getting younger. Okay, they're not as good up front on either side, and at running back, it feels egregious to walk into a season, and Rico Dowdle's a nice player, but he's not a feature back like that. It feels egregious to walk in with a running back room of Rico Dowdle, Zeke Elliott, and Deuce Vaughn.
My stat that told the story here, you mentioned everybody's going to talk about the Cowboys' run defense, and they should, because that is my stat that tells the story here. You talk about how the Cowboys couldn't move the ball on the ground. Well, the Ravens absolutely could, and I know that's their identity. That's what they want to do. It's what they're built for, but if you're the Cowboys, you got to defend it a lot better than you did, not just this week, but through the first 3 weeks of the season. It is not just like not good. It's horrible right now for the Dallas Cowboys. 33.4 run defense grade is a team that is the lowest grade in the NFL. And this is when, so I forgot to say this, I'm reading off these stats and grades. This is when the Cowboys have 7 or more defenders in the box. So you're either at an even count or you are loading the box. You have more defenders in there. And they have a 33.4 run defense grade, last in the NFL. 15 missed tackles in run defense situations, 29th in the NFL. Average depth of tackle, which to me speaks volumes about the interior defensive line, 5.54. You're giving up more than half the down and distance of a 1st and 10 on the ground. That's 31st in the NFL. Dallas right now ranks 29th in the NFL in rushing yards allowed. Actually, going into this week, I think Zoltan pointed this out, a writer for us. He said that the Dallas ranked 29th in rushing yards allowed before contact, giving up an average of 2.1 yards before the opposing ball carrier is even touched. Again, that speaks volumes of your defensive line, specifically the guys in the interior defensive line. The Cowboys will not win football. The Cowboys will not make the playoffs if they are going to play like this.
Nope.
Dak cannot drop back 60 times a game. They cannot completely abandon their own run game, and they cannot defend the run the way they are. The fundamentals of football are lacking for the Cowboys right now, and that's what you see in their record. And as the season goes on, if they do not fix those things, and I don't know if the cavalry's coming back, right? For the defensive line, you got talented players in the defensive line. You just got to play way better. I don't know if the cavalry's coming on the offensive side of things. I don't know what running back is really going to fix this for them. Maybe it's Dalvin. But if you're hanging your hopes on making the playoffs and improving this run game on Dalvin Cook at this point in time, in 2024, the year of our Lord, it's tough. So Cowboys are in a tough spot right now. They really are. Who's your most impressive in this game?
On the other side, and I know Derrick Henry had the big game with the numbers and all that, but you know what? Let me get a second Iowa Hawkeye offensive lineman in here, and that highest graded player for the Ravens, Tyler Linderbaum, their center. Spectacular game, 91.5 run blocking grade. He was just mauling people inside, no question there. The Ravens between the tackles, 12 carries for 96 yards and a touchdown. He had 12 positive grades on run blocks in this game. 12 of them, just mashing people in the middle. Everything that they thought they were getting out of Tyler Linderbaum when they drafted him, they got it yesterday. He was just absolutely killing people. I've got Tyler Linderbaum now. I've got James Daniels. Now I feel like I should have found a way to get Tristan Wirfs in this now. I just should have built a whole Iowa offensive line today. But no, Linderbaum, just the exact problems that we're saying for the Cowboys, Tyler Linderbaum took advantage, and he was paving the way all day for Derrick Henry.
No, I love the shout out there. I'm going to go back-to-back kickers here. Actually, you ready for this?
Third phase, let's go.
We're going third phase of the game here for my most impressive and most disappointing. My most impressive is Brandon Aubrey, the kicker for the Dallas Cowboys, because if there's a guy who it feels like it's keeping a minute, it feels like it's Brandon Aubrey. He's got a 94.3 kicking grade this season on field goals. That's the highest in the NFL, so he's the highest graded kicker that we have in our system. He's 5 for 5 on field goals beyond 50 yards. And he's 1 for 1 on field goals beyond 60 yards. He's the only kicker in the NFL so far through 3 weeks that has made a field goal beyond 60 yards. So he is proving to be an absolute weapon for them, because if you have a player who could convert as high of a percentage as he is from 50 plus, that changes math for you. Like, that changes how often you feel like you're in field goal position, what plays that you call. So Aubrey is, no question about it, an absolute weapon for this team, on a team that, we talked about, they're not playing well in the run game. They're sort of making up for it with how often they can get points on the board from further distances away. And I think that that's really important to them, because if they didn't have Aubrey, it would be even worse for this Cowboys offense. The most disappointing is Justin Tucker for the Baltimore Ravens. Tucker, in a career where he has been one of the best kickers in the NFL for basically over a decade now. 47.9 kicking grade. That's the second lowest in the league through 3 weeks this year. He's just 5 for 8 on field goals this season total. And last year, I didn't realize this. He was 1 for 5 on field goals of 50 or more yards last year. He is 0 for 2 this year. I might come back to regret to say this, but Justin Tucker at 35 years old might be cooked. And if he's cooked, that's not a great situation. Because
cooked might be extreme.
Can you move on from Justin Tucker in the middle of a season?
No.
Right, you can't.
No.
So if he does not get better, you could be leaving significant points on the board if you're the Ravens, like they already have this year. So kickers, third phase of the game, like you mentioned, often an afterthought. But if Justin Tucker, who at one point in time was automatic from long distances, is now one of the worst in the NFL, like if this trend continues, I agree with you. You can't cut Justin Tucker in the middle of the season. You basically just have to ride with him the whole time.
I think you're paying him too much anyway to cut him, right?
So
$6 or $7 million a year he's making, isn't he? No,
you better hope he's not cooked.
I get it.
That's all I'm saying. Better hope he's not cooked.
It's another weapon the Ravens really need to be right. Real quick, most disappointing. I know the Cowboys' run D has gotten a lot of flack. The interior guys, the linebackers, but one guy who was the reliable run D guy for them last year was DeMarcus Lawrence, and he's another guy. I would hope we're not starting to see a decline from him. He has 0 pressures in the last 2 weeks, and through 3 games, a 59.1 run defense grade. Last year, he was second in the NFL in run D grade behind Max Crosby.
Yeah.
If there was anybody last year who could at least defend the run and cause problems up front, it was DeMarcus Lawrence. If that's gone too, then this is like irrevocably bad. Then all of a sudden you're talking, because Micah Parsons is not a great run defender himself. It's the one weakness in his game. And obviously we know everything else on the inside is a mess. If DeMarcus Lawrence doesn't hit a gear something close to like he did last year, I don't know how Dallas fixes this front 7 in the run game.
Lions-Cardinals. Lions come away with the win, 20-13 in this game. Really good contest throughout. Let's go to Detroit's top 5 graded players in this game. Offensive tackle Penei Sewell's at the top of the list, 84.9. Guard Kevin Zeitler at an 83.1. Tight end Sam Laporta, 82.3. Edge rusher Aiden Hutchinson, an 82.2. And then center Frank Ragnow with an 81.3. Jared Goff in this game, a 73.5. On Arizona's side of things, their only player graded in the 80s, it is safety Budda Baker at an 83.0. Their edge rusher, Zaven Collins, had a 78.1. Wide receiver Michael Wilson with a 77.0. Center, how do you say his first name?
Isn't it Hjalt?
Hjalt? I believe it is. Hjalt Frodholt, 74.3. Got the last name there. Wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr., a 74.0. And then quarterback Kyler Murray, a week after a phenomenal performance for him, an MVP type of performance for him, came back down to earth a little bit here with a 58.6. Stat that told the story here with the Lions' victory. Dalton, what was it?
Very simple. Jared Goff, 23 pass attempts. Last week he had 58. The best moments of this Lions team and their offense so far has been running the ball and getting behind what should be the best offensive line in football and having balance and not making Jared Goff do everything. To his credit, with less pressure on him to carry it like that, weeks 1 and 2, let's take play action out of it. Non-play action passing grade in the first 2 weeks, 42.2. This game, when they gave him maybe a dozen or so opportunities to just drop back and throw the football, had an 85 passing grade. It's very simple for the Lions. This game, they are not all the way there yet. They beat a pretty good team with a really good offense. They need to play their style of ball and get back to it. The first 2 weeks, they did not do that. Offensive line, Montgomery, Gibbs, work off of that, right? I'm going to stay most impressive real quick with this offensive line. We already know it's a great unit. Decker, Glasgow, Zeitler, Ragnow, Sewell. Another one I can name all five just like that.
Yeah,
I cannot do that with every team in the league. The really good ones you can do that because they're stars. As a unit, 88.1 overall grade in this game. Only 3 pressures allowed. And how about this for a stat? Because it was the highest percentage of the week of any O-line. 39 positive run blocks on 42 running plays. They're just moving people. They didn't score. Look, they're not all the way there yet either. The Lions still have a lot to fix. They did not score a point in the second half of this game. They got ahead. They had the trick play right before halftime, the hook and ladder that worked. But this is how they need to win games. They got back to the roots here, and I think it's going to start looking better the next couple of weeks. Limit Goff's opportunity to have to carry you. He should not, even as good as he is, and as good as he is in clean pockets, he should not have to carry you through football games, right? They got back to running the ball. Montgomery, I believe, had a 100-yard day, a really good day. Win the way that you built this thing, with this offensive line, with this run game, with balance, and they'll be fine. It was a good get back, kind of get right in the right direction game for them. They're not all the way there, but this is how they have to win.
Yeah, and I'll keep the conversation going with just my most impressive, and it's Ben Johnson. You know, after the first couple of weeks, if it felt like they just weren't themselves, sort of to your point there, whether it was how much they were running the ball versus passing the ball, or just the faith in one another. Goff, when he was going up against the Buccaneers, he was short arming the ball a bunch. It's like he wasn't giving his guys a chance.
He should never throw the ball 58 times, ever.
And I think this week, specifically with Ben Johnson as well, the creativity was there. Now, obviously, it's very easy to look creative when it works. There's a lot of creative plays that don't work, and sometimes we yell at offensive coordinators to be more creative, and they're like, I am. It just didn't work. It just didn't work this week. But it felt like that creativity was really on one this week, and they were playing very, very well. The hook and ladder touchdown is beautiful. I mean, that's the stuff that, it feels the Lions or the Chiefs are basically the only teams that are, doing that at this point in time. And if you're going to be in the Chiefs' creative company, I think that that's really good company to be in. There was the touchdown pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown where they weren't on the goal line. I think they were a couple of yards. They might have been on the 4 or 5 or something like that. Goff's throwing to his left, and he eventually gets to his left when Amon-Ra St. Brown is running a whip route on the far side. But the formation starts and the play starts. It's trip receivers to the left side. And Goff hikes the football, and he looks to his left. And there are 4 different routes that he could have thrown to at that point in time. And they all were sort of working off one another with the combination and the timing of when the receivers were sort of coming into whatever their window was going to be. Goff ends up throwing the ball to St. Brown when he's coming back on the whip route. St. Brown makes a great catch, but honestly, he had an easier touchdown with a little Texas route from Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield where all he had to do was sort of just dump it off to him. And that he was so open to walk in for a score because it was Jamison Williams, and I cannot remember who the other receiver was there, but they were both running routes that could have been open, but the fact that they weren't open, they still operated basically as clear out routes. So it's a simple play that you go, wow, great touchdown, good throw and catch by Goff and his number one receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown. But to me, when I watched that play, it was so much more. It was the layers of when those receivers were possibly going to be open. It was the fact that the routes they didn't have a singular purpose. Sometimes they were multi-purposed routes in what they could have been for that play. That's a brilliant play caller. That is a brilliant play designer. And it felt like we didn't see the fruits of that through the first couple of weeks with Ben Johnson. He reminded us there's a reason why he has been the most requested head coach over the last 2 head coaching cycles in this past game, which was great to see there for him. What's your most disappointing in this one? Because I'll get to my disappointing, and then my stat that told the story sort of works off of that a little bit.
I'm going to just lock into a narrow thing, and I know it kind of plays with what you're doing anyway, but the Cardinals, one of the things that's been kind of happening since the second half of last year, on top of Kyler Murray getting healthy, is their offensive line just getting better. And this week, their 2 guards who had 2 really good weeks to start the year, Evan Brown and Will Hernandez, more of a struggle this week. Just struggled to block DJ Reader and Levi Owuzurike and Aleem McNeil before he got hurt. Just struggling to block the Lions' interior. This was a game where you saw DJ Reader make a real impact. Hernandez and Brown, the first 2 weeks combined for a 74.4 grade. This week, 49.4, and when the Cardinals ran between the tackles, 7 carries for 18 yards. Just a struggle on the inside. The Lions' D-line across the board really played well and beat up the Cardinals inside.
So my stat that told, I guess I'll go stat that told the story first, because then I'll get to a little bit of a disappointing. But third down, really. This team was really great on third down through the first 2 weeks. In week 1, they were 54% third down conversion rate. Week 2 against the Rams, 64% third down conversion rate. This past week against the Lions, 1 for 9, 11% on third down conversions. And that goes into another point that I had, which is sort of a complementary stat that told the story here. Kyler Murray's average depth of target. Week 1, it was 6.5. Okay. Week 2 was 10.0. Okay, you're really cranking it up there. This past week it was 13.4. I don't know if Kyler heard the MVP hype. I don't know if it was the fact that he had a bunch of deep shots in week 2, but it just felt like he was only looking for the big plays in this game. And the average depth of target to me shows that. And I believe that him looking deep for the biggest pass, what was the biggest completion that I could make on these plays, to me, he did that too often in this game. And that's why the average depth of target was so high. And that's also, in my opinion, why the third down conversion was so low. That sort of goes into my most disappointing. It's the Cardinals' run game. James Conner, I think, is a good back in this league. Only 17 yards on 9 carries. They did not run the ball as much as they needed to stay as balanced as they needed to. After the game, Jonathan Gannon even said, hey, credit to the Lions. They did a really great job shutting down what we wanted to do in the run game in the second half. And I do agree with them, but it's just got to be more productive there, because Kyler, for as magical as he can be, like what we saw in week 2, if he is simply going for these big-time throws all the time, you're going to leave too many plays unmade. And I felt like that was the fall back down to earth, if you will, for Kyler Murray being at the front runner of the MVP conversation like he was after week 2. So it's just got to be a little bit more of a, what's your word?
Balanced
approach.
That's the word of the day is balance.
Yes.
I try to bring that here, honestly.
Yeah, you and Thanos.
Yeah.
Balance.
Well, that's extreme. That's a little extreme there.
It is. But,
there's different types of balance.
Was he wrong? He's just trying to save the universe.
Now you're getting into the real argument.
That's why he's a great villain. Because was he really wrong? You don't know. That's for the listener to decide. Are you wrong? It's for the listener to decide.
I'm always wrong.
Dolphins and Seahawks is the next game I want to go to. Seahawks win this one 24-3. No Tua Tagovailoa. Really hard for Miami to compete. We'll talk about Seattle's top 5 players. Tight end Noah Fant at the top of the list, 83.7. Defensive tackle Jonathan Hankins with the 78.5. Tyrell Dodson, their linebacker, number 3 on this list, at a 77.3. Zach Charbonnet, the running back, filling in for Kenneth Walker. He had a 74.5 overall grade. Charles Cross, 73.2. That are offensive tackle. And then Geno Smith, a 73.5 in this game. On the other side of things, for Miami, defensive tackle Calais Campbell.
Ageless.
Another one. That is the theme of this this show here.
We could have been doing this show in 2014, and we would have got all these same guys that we're getting.
You might not be wrong. Calais Campbell, this is at the top of the list here. Calais Campbell, 91.1 overall grade. Defensive tackle Zach Seiler had a career day. I'm going to shout him out in a second. 86.5. Cornerback Jalen Ramsey with a 79.3. Offensive tackle Kendall Lamb, who had to come in for Teron Armstead, who had an eye injury in this one, and he was not able to return. 74.9. Tight end Julian Hill with a 70.0, and then Skylar Thompson filling in for Tua Tagovailoa before he even went out, and we had to see a little Tim Boyle action. 43.1 overall grade there for Skylar Thompson. What's your stat that told the story here, Dalton?
They just don't have Tua. I mean, the two guys together.
Sometimes it is just that simple.
The two guys together had a 47.4 passing grade. They had Thompson had 2 turnover-worthy plays, or together they had 2 turnover-worthy plays. There was 6 sacks. Tyreek Hill had 40 yards. Jalen Waddle had 26, and Thompson, and he was under pressure a good amount, but took 5 sacks. Both turnover-worthy plays were under pressure. It's just I don't really know how they're going to win without Tua or without some other option at quarterback.
And I'll tell you what, the stat that told the story for me is the Dolphins' run game, because you're down your starting quarterback. The run game has to supplement what you're doing, even with great pass catchers like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Last year, the Miami Dolphins were second in the NFL in rushing grade as a team at a 92.3, and they were 10th in EPA per rush. This year, the Dolphins are 31st in EPA per rush. They're not even regressing to the mean. Like, they're not even middle of the pack in the NFL right now. They're damn near dead last. So, not only do you not have Tua, you don't have the run game that you had last year.
Well, you lost Robert Hunt, one of the best guards in football.
Right.
You lost Connor Williams, one of the best centers in football.
That goes into it as well. And Liam Eichenberg struggling. Aaron Brewer struggled in this game.
Teron Armstead keeps getting hurt, and I know that's a thing you're touching. I mean, it's just right now.
They do not have the run game to survive without Tua. They don't. And I don't know what conversations are going on behind the scenes with this team, but if Tua is going to be out for most of this year,
let's just say even 4 to 5 weeks, because here's the other problem: the Dolphins.
Well, he's on IR, so he has to miss the next 4 weeks.
So it's 4, so it's 3 more after this one, at least 3 more. The problem for the Dolphins too, the front half of their schedule is supposed to be a lot easier than the back half. The last 5 or 6 weeks of their schedule is absolutely brutal. If they don't get there with more than if they start this season 2-6 or 2-7, and you look at the back end of their schedule, I don't know how they get back. And then you have Tua out of rhythm, coming off a concussion, and everybody's worried about another one because that's what we're going to.
Of course,
right.
If Tua is even at risk of missing anything more than these next 3 games that are coming up, you have to look hard at the quarterbacks that might be available via trade.
I'm not even sure who that would be. Is it Davis Mills?
Well, I mean, you could look at a situation where
bring Ryan Tannehill back.
I mean, maybe, but where's Joe Flacco, right? I mean,
backing up Richardson,
right? I mean, do you think about giving the Colts a call for Joe Flacco? Aiden O'Connell, it looks like, is the one with Gardner Minshew getting the starting job. Do you figure out what his price is?
Sam Howell.
Dare I say Bryce Young, right? I mean, do you figure out what his price tag is? But that's the conversation. If the run game's going to be this bad, this season's going to get off the rails quick for the Dolphins. I really do believe that. My most impressive, though, Zach Charbonnet, filling in very, very nicely for Kenneth Walker. 18 carries, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns in this one, but a PFF statistic. 9 forced missed tackles in this game, a 0.50 missed tackles forced per attempt average. That is very high, folks. That means that when you are touching the football, every other carry, you are having an opportunity where you are making somebody miss an open field. It's your job as the running back. That's why we love that stat, because the run game can often be so credited to the offensive line, which it makes sense when you think about the run game overall. But missed tackles forced, specifically missed tackles forced per attempt, and the average that you have there shows you how often does a running back as an individual make something happen in the run game, really create those yards. once they get into open space. That and then yards after contact, two really good stats that we have there. So really good look from Zach Charbonnet there. I also do want to shout out Zach Seiler, who was number 2 on that list there. Said the second highest single game pass rushing grade of his career at a 90.0 with a 20.7 pass rush win percentage. So, obviously we didn't talk very highly of the Dolphins there, but shout out to Zach Seiler. Wanted to make sure that I got that in here.
Yeah, my most impressive, give me DK Metcalf all day. 4 catches, 104 yards, second straight game with a 50-yard touchdown. Just a perfect fit in this offense. Geno Smith slinging the ball deep. Metcalf has a 96 receiving grade on deep balls so far. Perfect fit in Ryan Grubb's offense and the way they want to throw it down the field. Everything works together, and Metcalf is the guy that makes it happen. Takes the top off, and the guy he did beat for his touchdown, Javon Holland, for me, is the most disappointing for the Dolphins. Dolphins D-line played pretty well in this game. The secondary has struggled through 3 weeks, and there's a lot of big names. You have Javon Holland, you have Jalen Ramsey, you have Kendall Fuller, you have a bunch of guys with talent, and they're just not getting it done. And right now he's got a 52.6 overall grade through 3 games. That is a career low through 3 games. So same thing you mentioned with the running game. If they don't start playing better on defense, it doesn't matter either.
Yeah.
I look, and it's going to be hard enough if Skylar Thompson's hurt, if he's out next week. It's hard enough. I saw it with the Jets last year. It's hard enough to win games with Tim Boyle as your quarterback.
Zach Wilson. They can give Zach Wilson a call.
You could. Oh, that would be some revenge, wouldn't it? Don't do that. Actually, don't do that, Miami. I don't need that. Well, it already hurts enough to see Darnold and Geno excelling. I don't need a third one. But no,
Geno's playing really well.
Geno's so good.
He is playing really.
Is he just the most underrated quarterback in football right now?
I think so.
He's so good.
I think he is. Because he's playing at a top 10 level, I feel like.
The deep ball, the confidence, the pocket movement,
just
throwing
the poise in every situation, I feel like.
He is just a grizzled veteran at this point. He's really, really good. I mean, there's plenty of reasons they're 3-0, and some people will point to soft schedule. Look, Seattle, I believe they're leading the league in coverage grade on defense. And Geno Smith is playing, I think, somewhere in the top 5 or 6 of our overall grades. This is a good football team all the way around. And like you mentioned, Geno's a huge part of it. This is another good win for them.
My most disappointing is just Teron Armstead. I mean, eye injury, shoulder injury, knee injury. We're only 3 games into the season. And they obviously need him. I know Lamb played well in his stead, but they need Teron Armstead out there as much as a lot of other guys to get healthy, including Tua, which is what was a big storyline for this game. Hey, when you are hiring for your small business, you want to find high-quality professionals who are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team fast and for free. We do a lot of hiring here at PFF, and it's not just about reading resumes, right? I mean, like, we'll do that all the time, but it's about finding the people who are going to gel with your team, be able to align with your brand, and be able to represent your company really, really well and take you to new heights. LinkedIn, it's not just a job board. It helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, including those who aren't even actively searching for new jobs, might be open to the perfect role. Sometimes that could be the best hires that you can find. We get that with LinkedIn Jobs. In a given month, 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you are not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place, plain and simple. LinkedIn, 86% of their small businesses get qualified for candidates within 24 hours. Even hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn, constantly finding new ways to make this process easier. They're even just launching a feature that helps you write job descriptions and make that process even easier and quicker for you hiring as well. So post your jobs on LinkedIn for free. At linkedin.com/PFF. That is linkedin.com/PFF to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply there. Got a couple of games left. There it is. You've been waiting. You've been waiting. We should have put this one a little bit higher in the show, but hopefully
we should have let off with it.
We should have let off with your narcissism here. Panthers at Raiders. Walt, hope you're still in the chat. Sorry for this one, buddy. 36-22, the Carolina Panthers get off to Schneid, get their first win of the season, and boy, did it look pretty for the Andy Dalton-led Carolina Panthers. When we look at the top 5 graded players for Carolina, running back Chuba Hubbard with a 90.6, defensive tackle Ashawn Robinson an 82.5, cornerback Troy Hill a 79.4, wide receiver Deontay Johnson gets a 77.1, and then Ike Ekwonu rounding out the list at number 5 with a 76.2. Andy Dalton would have been in that top 5 if we weren't separating the quarterbacks. 78.8. Flips out to the other side for the Las Vegas Raiders. Center Dylan Parham, 78.5. Offensive tackle Colton Miller with a 76.4. Isaiah Polamalu, 74.8. Wide receiver Trey Tucker with a 72.5. Wide receiver Jacoby Myers with a 71.6. And then Gardner Minshew, who did not finish this game, had a 66.5. What was the stat that told the story here with this thrilling Panthers victory?
This is all about the Panthers creating clean pockets, as they've been doing in all three of their games, and Andy Dalton taking advantage. Clean pocket, 25 of 32, 314 yards, 2 touchdowns, 80.5 passing grade.
That'll do it.
And I hate to do it. I'm just going to compare this to Bryce Young because, again, I think the reason they benched him is because this year their problems are more isolated to Bryce Young. In those 2 games with Bryce Young, clean pocket, 28 of 44, 200 yards, 2 interceptions, 49.6 passing grade. The environment was there. Deontay Johnson was great yesterday. Got Xavier Legette involved. Incredible throw on a touchdown to Adam Thielen. It was there. It was there the entire time. This time, last year, again, I could blame the entire team for just being a train wreck. They couldn't protect. They had no. Adam Thielen was their best receiver, and they had nothing else. Couldn't run the ball. Couldn't do anything last year. These first 2 games, their offensive line has shown serious signs of life, and there's a better set of weapons to work with. And Andy Dalton took full advantage when he was clean. The other thing I want to go to real quick: 10+ yard throws. 6 of 11, 112 yards, 2 touchdowns. Young, it took 2 games for him to hit 6 10+ yard throws. And Dalton had that yesterday alone. And I'm just going to skip to my most impressive real quick because it all ties together. These 2 guards that they signed in free agency, Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, just spectacular. Robert Hunt yesterday, 88 pass blocking grade. Damian Lewis, 87.5. 81 combined reps in pass protection. They combined to lose 1 rep all day. Just 1. They went 80 for 81 in pass protection, no official pressures. And look, interior protection was the big thing with those 2 guys, plus getting Austin Corbett back healthy at center, okay? Guards and centers, interior protection last year, pass blocking grade. Last year, 31st. This year, best in the NFL. This is how quickly it can turn around if you get your offensive line going right. They already had Taylor Moton and Ike Ekwonu at tackle. The interior was a train wreck. Now it's anything but a train wreck, and if they're going to pass protect like this, you keep rolling Andy Dalton out there with clean pockets, and you let him do what he does.
I think there were excuses last year, right, with Bryce and the struggles with the Panthers offense. People look at, okay, you're giving Bryce the hook after 2 weeks. Like, how could Dave Canales do this? This is why. Now, I'm not going to say that this is exactly how it's going to look for Carolina throughout the rest of the season. We see the backup quarterback bump all the time, right? It's just it's something that happens in the NFL. But the wide receivers played better. The offensive line played as good as they've been playing lately. Chuba Hubbard played well as their running back. And the rest of the offense was at the point where Bryce was not a part of their struggles, actively holding them back. And that's the difference. When you look at the stat that told the story for me, it's the EPA per play. Week 1, EPA per pass, I should say, for the Carolina Panthers. Negative 0.374 in week 1, negative 0.903, which is one of the lowest negative EPA per pass numbers I've ever seen. And then this week, it was positive 0.278. Now, those are a lot of numbers. What does that mean? Well, 2 of them are drastically negative. 1 of them is a much bigger positive. That's all you need to know. The offense looked completely night and day different with Andy Dalton there at quarterback. And to the Panthers offensive line, again, like to get into my most impressive, it is the Panthers offensive line. 76.1 pass blocking grade, which was the 8th best in the NFL in week 3. Obviously, we got 2 games left to go. But 4 pressures, which was the 3rd lowest. So it's like
it was all there.
Everyone on this team played better because they knew they had a quarterback who could do it for them. I don't mean to be overly critical of Bryce. I don't mean to say that he could never be good in the NFL again. But it was so clear that from the first quarter of this game, that Bryce has never been the best quarterback on this roster.
And Dalton making not just the flashy throws up the seam and the touchdowns and stuff, but
he gave guys a chance.
Making the easy throws and just moving the chains. If it was 3rd and 8 and we're throwing an 8-yard out, just hitting it. Yes. I think we're seeing, and there's a lot of talk right now about the veteran quarterbacks that are playing, the Aaron Rodgers, the Matthew Staffords, the Kirk Cousins, the guys who have been around and have seen a lot of defense and just know the process. Andy Dalton's one of those guys. Look, he's been playing since 2011. right? And he just has an idea of where he wants to go with the football. The tools might not be what they used to be, but having that ability to process and just be calm and process things from the pocket, huge asset for them right now. And again, I think this was done in part to get a fair evaluation of the rest of their team. Okay, what do we actually look like if this line keeps protecting like this? What does Xavier Legette look like when we can actually get him the football? What is Deontay Johnson? Could he be our number one guy if we actually get him the football?
Clearly.
For one day, that big soapbox optimism rant I went on with the Panthers worked because we had good quarterback play, and the rest of it fell right in line with it. So big props to Andy Dalton. Huge win just to get that off your back for a week at least.
The rest of the team, offensive side of the ball and defensive side of the ball, looked like they had something to play for. And to your point, I think the big takeaway with Dalton is the flashy plays were great. The throws up the seam you mentioned. But Bryce made the easy stuff look so difficult.
Yeah.
And Andy Dalton makes the easy stuff look easy because he's been there before, and he's done it before in this league for over a decade. The most disappointing to me was the Raiders' coverage. 30.4 coverage grade as a team. That was lowest in the NFL this past week. And Jack Jones specifically, I'm most disappointed in Jack Jones. After the game, Antonio Pierce said, there were some players who were making business decisions in this game. I have a hard time thinking that he's not thinking of Jack Jones, of at least one of those players, because Jones had a 37.4 run defense grade, and Jones is a smaller corner, okay? Like, I get it. I understand. Smaller corners, they don't like taking on blocks. They don't like run defense because, quite frankly, it hurts. They're smaller dudes, and they're having to tackle these big running backs, and, like, I get it. It's run defense as a smaller corner is mental as much as it is physical, but Jack Jones, handful of reps where he was not interested in run defense at all whatsoever in this game. So just not a good defensive performance from this team, but mainly the coverage grade. Most disappointing for you. Who you got?
It's another team. Here we go. We got another one. Raiders, you will not win without balance. If you don't find a running game, you won't go anywhere. Right now they're at 2.8 yards per carry on the season. They are last in rushing grade. They have a 40.7 rushing grade. The next closest team, Trev's, at like a 58. The rushing grade is at the bottom. The run blocking grade is second to last. They have 2.8 yards per carry. Right now, look, Gardner Minshew's a gamer. He's going to fight and battle and do all those things and make fearless throws. But, again, if you don't have balance, they're going nowhere. And you just saw, like, even Devontae Adams kind of dejected on the sideline sometime during the game yesterday. And just they just, if you're one-dimensional in the NFL, you're not going to succeed, even against a team. We say a team like Carolina, but 3 hours later, Carolina turned into a team that's a game out of first place. So anything can happen in the league. You're playing any team, but if you're one-dimensional and you're asking Gardner Minshew to carry your team, good luck to you. That's just not. It's the theme with so many teams right now. It's you have to find. I know it's a quarterback league. I know it's a quarterback sport, but I like Gardner Minshew. He's not good enough. He's not going to throw 400 yards. He's not going to do what he did against the Ravens last week. You can't ask
him to do that.
You just can't ask him. It's just not. You just can't. I mean, this. What have we gone over? 5 or 6 teams already with this, where the teams, and especially all the too highs.
No, it's an epidemic because defenses are giving offenses the opportunity to run the football.
Yeah.
And they can't do it.
And the teams that are the ones, I know the Ravens are 1 and 2, but they're going to get the Saints and you've just got the Bills are running the football. They're running the hell out of the football. They're finding ways to do it. The Jets can run the ball. They've got 2 different guys who can run the ball. You've got teams that are succeeding in the running game that are winning ball games.
Yeah.
And you can tell they will continue to win ball games because they have options. And right now the Raiders, they only have one option, and that's Gardner Minshew.
O-line development. And the scouting process is an interesting thing to look at because with the NFL and defense is saying, okay, you can run the football, and offense is going, we're built to pass. I think defenses know that they're not going to be able to make that switch this year, certainly in the early parts of this season. Thriller here, 49ers and the Rams. Rams, what an incredible win for them, 27-24 here in this game. I'm of the opinion that the Rams went and won this game. I understand the 49ers are going to be like, we blew it. How did we blow it? I'm giving more credit to the Rams than I am blaming the San Francisco 49ers, although we will get to some most disappointing here. For the Los Angeles Rams, edge rusher Byron Young was the top-graded player in their top 5 with an 80.6. Wide receiver Tutu Atwell with a 79.3. Tight end Hunter Long with a with a 79.3 as well. Wide receiver Jordan Whittington, the rookie, had a 79.2. Offensive tackle Rob Havenstein with a 72.7. And then quarterback Matt Stafford with a 69.7. On the 49ers side of things, their grades at the top look better. Wide receiver Juwan Jennings had a monster day. He earns an elite 90.5 overall grade. Defensive tackle Malik Collins is next with a 76.9. Offensive tackle Trent Williams with a 74.3. Safety Jair Brown with a 71.6. And then Fred Warner with a 71.0. Quarterback Brock Purdy did have an elite 90.1 or 91.1 game grade in this game. What's the stat that told the story here, Dalton?
For me, it's the Niners coverage at 48.4 coverage grade. They only had one game worse than that last year. That was that beating they took when they were home against Baltimore. I think it was right around Christmas or somewhere around there when they lost to the Ravens last year. 48.4 coverage grade. Jair Brown was the only player on their team with over a 62 coverage grade. They were left in a lot of one-on-one matchups, and this was the one you mentioned Kevin O'Connell against Houston, beating up single high, cover three, those types of coverages. Same story here for the Niners, staying in single high and kind of getting stubborn with it. Week one, they were great in single high. The Jets barely had the ball. They had to force it when they were behind. 87.5 coverage grade when they were single high in week one. The last 2 weeks against O'Connell's Vikings first, 52.4, and now Sean McVay, very similar offense, 40.4 single high coverage grade, running it at a 60% rate that was higher than their first 2 games. So they stayed in it. They weren't going away with it or from it. The Rams had their top 2 receivers out. They felt like, okay, we'll be fine, single high. A lot of plays where they had guys isolated one-on-one and didn't win the battle. There was a couple of big PIs that hurt them bad too for big gains. The Niners coverage unit, they, for as much as Stafford was great and fighting through it with guys like Tutu Atwell and Jordan Whittington and guys like that, the Niners just never really adjusted to what was going on in coverage, and they just stayed the way they've been playing it the last 2 weeks, in the same way that Kevin O'Connell beat them, the same way that Kevin O'Connell beat the Texans. Now Sean McVay went and did it to the 49ers, so that's the story for me.
Second half Stafford is the story for me, and it feels like that's a theme of this young season, what Matthew Stafford can do in the third and fourth quarters of games, especially those late drives that mean so much. He's a veteran in this league. He's seen a lot of things before. Obviously, he's won a Super Bowl, and when you look at his first half passing grades, it was a 57.8. It took this team a long time to get things going. In fact, I think in the first quarter, what did they have, like one pass attempt? Like they were trying to run the football at the beginning of this game, and they really did not want to pass it. So 57.8 passing grade for Stafford in the first half, 77.1 in the second half is when he really came alive. So having that guy back there, both of his top 2 receivers down, injuries along the offensive line, if they got 9 back there, they got a chance. And he's showcasing that every single week, and this was another week included, which brings me to my most impressive, which is Sean McVay and Les Snead. What they have done to get the right guys into this building, I don't think can be understated, because the Rams should not have won this football game.
On paper, there is no reason
they should not have won this football game. They shouldn't have won this football game before it started, and they shouldn't have won this football game when, I don't remember what the biggest score discrepancy was in this game, but the Niners had this.
I think they had a 10-point lead at least. I think it was 10.
The Niners had this game. They were the more talented. They were the more healthy. Even with Deebo Samuel out of this game, they should have won this game. They had the better players on paper. They had the better game plan in the first half, certainly. They set the tone. They should have won this game. And they didn't. Again, less because I think the 49ers choked, and more because the guys in the Rams locker room rallied around whatever the second half adjustments were. They didn't mail it in. Every ounce of momentum that they had in that game, it just multiplied their confidence more and more until mentally they got into the fourth quarter and they continued to believe in that game. That's something that Sean McVay talked about afterwards, and we talk about a lot of quantifiable things here at PFF, a lot of data points, grades, things that we could point to. Honestly, the reason why the Rams won this game is because they wanted to win this game. Because they have a locker room full of guys that will not quit. And
it happens in all 3 phases, too. I mean, when you talk about the offense, Stafford and the offense, and McVay and the offense, right? Their defense held the Niners scoreless for, the last 25-ish minutes or so? They didn't score in the fourth quarter. You still have to make stops to get yourself back into a game. And think we should point out at the very, very end when they got the ball back that last drive, Xavier Smith with the big punt return too. You're going to get back in games like this when you're coming back against really good teams. It happens in all three phases. And to me, with the Niners, I know what you're saying, that the Rams, they absolutely won this game. But it's always something with the Niners in these close games. They've lost 6 of their last 8 one-score games. And,
wow.
And the 2 wins were actually in the playoffs when they had to come back on both Green Bay and Detroit.
And it's easier to, well, I don't want to say it's easier to come back than protect the league, but mentally it feels like it's something.
Well, it's an aggressive, urgent way of thinking, right? And we've seen it. Look, even in Super Bowls, right? Go back to 2019, that Super Bowl, the first one against the Chiefs, they had a lead. They had that game locked. And then the last 7 minutes, it just got away from them. You know, they played really well in last year's Super Bowl, and it just got away from them, right? These close games, until they win a Super Bowl, these close games are going to be a question for Kyle Shanahan. And that's the most disappointing part for me is I just have to go there as I go. This is not the first time we've seen this from San Francisco. There are just times when they just don't finish games.
Yeah, and, talk about I really hate
and one-score games can be random, but there's a few teams, them included, that it doesn't feel random.
I hate calling out effort because every NFL player wants to win. I wanted a better game from Brandon Ayuk here. 10 targets, 5 catches, 48 receptions. He had a drop, 65.4 receiving grade. Dropped that final pitch to him. I get it. It's sort of this, Hail Mary rugby type of a play, but he was not in that takeover mode that I thought Brandon Ayuk would be in. He wasn't. And he is the most disappointing to me because Juwan Jennings had an incredible day. But I don't mean to take away from Jennings' performance. That should have been Ayuk. Or at least Ayuk's individual performance should have been a lot closer to whatever Juwan Jennings' incredible performance was.
Does the lack of practice and preseason play into that?
I think that something might go into that, but whatever it was, Ayuk was disappointing to me in this game because I felt like he could have been a bigger factor as their star who they just paid, and I understand why they paid him. He's a damn good wide receiver. At his best, he was uncoverable last year. He has not looked like that same player this year. And it just felt like it was a shell of what we're used to with Brandon Ayuk this past game. And that's disappointing, especially when they have to now swallow the fact that they blew a lead and they lost this game.
Yeah, and look, you mentioned Juwan Jennings. I'll just go with this. Even in a losing effort, he was the best player on the field. 11 catches.
He wanted it, man.
175 yards, 3 touchdowns. Look, we saw him have a really good Super Bowl last year too against Kansas City. He was one of the best players on the field in that game too. A 90.2 receiving grade in this game. Look, that's the even weirder part for the Niners. No Debo, no Kittle, no McCaffrey, but Juwan Jennings steps up for him. Big time. That's more than stepping up. That's putting the team on your back, honestly. And to still find a way to lose that game despite getting an effort like that from a guy who's considered a role player and when they're healthy, the 5th option on this team, and a guy that could have been easily replaced with their first-round pick, Ricky Pearsall, and obviously everything's happened with Pearsall. Jennings had the best game you could possibly imagine with all those other guys out, and it still just didn't work for him. And you mentioned about Ayuk too. The Rams, that's a prime matchup when you talk about coverage. That's a bottom 5 coverage team in the NFL, and they just these are the types of games that make you doubt the Niners could finish a run.
Which sucks, because they're fun to watch when everything's going well.
Yeah, especially if they were to go against Kansas City again, transition, who just keep finding ways to win games despite not playing that well.
Yeah, we got 2 more primetime games that we're talking about here. One of them is Sunday Night Football, and then we'll chat a little bit about Thursday Night Football before the weekend. Chiefs take down the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta, 22-17. Let's look at the Chiefs' top 5 graded players in this game. Rashee Rice is at the top of the list with an 81.8. Trey Smith coming in at number 2 with an 81.0. Creed Humphrey with a 79.2. Linebacker Nick Bolton making the play of the game at the end there with a big tackle on Bijan Robinson, 75.5. Your boy, safety Shamari Connor with a 70.4 there at number 5. And then Patrick Mahomes, a 61.1. On the Falcons side of things, Chris Lidstrom leads the way with a 78.0. Wide receiver Drake London with a 77.7. And then wide receiver Darnell Mooney with a 74.9. Safety Justin Simmons, a 73.8. Cornerback A.J. Terrell with a 69.6. Kirk Cousins Their quarterback earned a 64.8 overall grade in this one. What was the stat that told the story here, Dalton?
Atlanta Falcons, and it played out from pretty early in the game to all the way down to the very last play. 3 for 12 converting on 3rd and 4th down.
Ooh, yeah, it's not good.
They just did not come through in the situations where they really, really needed to. And I wasn't a huge fan of the play calling on those last 2 plays. I think there's too many coaches in the league, and I've even seen it in college, who are just resigned to getting in big goal line personnel on 3rd and 1 and running it down the pipe. I think you have Kirk Cousins, a veteran quarterback who you could at least get in a formation with and see if he can sight adjust and maybe call a play at the line of scrimmage. But here's the facts for the Falcons on 3rd down and 4th down. 3 for 12 on early downs. Their offensive team grade was 74.1, and on 3rd and 4th down, it was 59.2, and a big part of it was their pass protection, which has underwhelmed a bit considering the guys they have up front. On 3rd and 4th down last night, they had a 28.5 pass pro grade. When the Chiefs knew they were throwing, they were getting after it. They were winning the battle. You always see some blitz looks from Steve Spagnuolo. Chris Jones in the middle was always a huge problem. This was just a game to me where the Falcons, I should say the Chiefs just won all of the biggest moments.
Yeah.
And that's it. They didn't even play fully. The game itself on the whole was pretty even, but the Chiefs, as they always do, they just won. If you took the 5 most crucial moments of this game, the Chiefs just win those moments. And that's the difference, and that's really why they're 3-0, is because they're just that slight bit better at executing when the pressure's on, right? And it's the same thing in this game.
So I think that goes into sort of my stat that told the story. And it's funny, we call this stat that told the story. I don't have the stat for this because it would have taken me like 2 hours to look up everything. It's the familiarity and the experience that the Chiefs have on both sides of the ball, but particularly the defensive side of the ball. I was talking with Jeff Schwartz about this, or he responded to one of my tweets last night, where after that game-winning tackle by Nick Bolton, which I'll get to in a second, I just said they just want they want it. They want it more than everybody else.
I hated that play call, by the way.
Steve Spagnuolo. And look, I didn't love the play call either, but like the Chiefs were ready for it. And if you look at that play call, a lot of people were like, why would you run like a sweep? Why would you run something to the outside? Why wouldn't you just run up the middle? You only needed a yard or whatever it was. Go look at the middle of that offensive line. How bad they got blown up. If they would have run up the middle like you wanted to, or if they would have even run a QB sneak, well, they would not have gotten it.
They ran Chiefs, right down the pipe the previous play, and that didn't work.
Did not work.
I don't know why you pay Cousins $50 million a year and not let him win. I always say it, live and die with your best players. Is Kirk Cousins not, other than maybe Bijan, is he not their best player?
No, you would say their offensive line is. This is okay, all right. This then
not the way it's playing this year,
right? But listen, last year. So this is my most disappointing. This goes right into my most disappointing. Falcons offensive line, 3rd in the league in overall blocking grade, 6th in pass protection grade last year. Through 3 weeks this season, they're 17th in overall blocking grade, and they're 28th in pass blocking grade. Okay, so a lot of people wanted the pass. I hear what you're saying. They're 28th in pass blocking grade. You got one play to rule them all, if you will, in this game, and you're going to put it behind the offensive line that was already down 2 starters, didn't have Caleb McGarry, didn't have Drew Dahlman. Chris Lindstrom's been one of the worst pass-blocking offensive linemen in the game, and you're still going to do that against Chris Jones and the Chiefs and Karlaftis?
In that moment where I need 1 yard,
you're going to pass the football?
They looked fine the rest of the drive before that. He got them all the way down to the 20-yard line, and he got them down to the 5-yard line the previous drive.
I don't hate what you're saying.
They didn't play well, but it's more to me about the play call and just like the formations and how it went, like especially that 4th down one. If you want to run the ball, fine. Spread them out and do it from a real formation. Like, why are we in like 1940s 23 personnel?
Well,
like, we're in a T. Like, we're getting in a T, and we've got Algier leading for Bijan on like a 1940s buck sweep. Like,
Spagnuolo
just
knew it was coming.
Run something in your offense. Like, go light box, because the Chiefs had 9 guys on the line of scrimmage.
I know.
They had 9 guys on the D line, and then Bolton and whoever the other linebacker was, and it was just. That's just not like how to go away from. Okay, so even if you want to run the ball, spread the formation out, lighten the box. Like this thing that I see, not just the Falcons, a lot of teams do, where like, okay, it's 3rd and 1, put all of our tight ends on our roster on the field, or 7 offensive linemen, and tell everyone in the world we're running.
Win up front, Dalton.
Look.
Get after it.
You can't make it harder for your up front guy. If all 11 guys are, it's just like the Saints thing. Okay, so the Eagles respond, and they put all those guys on the D-line. Who won the battle? The Eagles. You eventually run out of numbers. Okay, hat on hat is great. Lighter boxes have been an emphasis in recent times because you're not relying on as many hats, especially if a read option game is going. So if I need 5 successes, okay, if it's 5 on 5 in the box, okay, cool. I feel better about my chances of going 5 for 5 than 9 for 9. Because the law of large numbers tells you that there's going to be more of the outcomes, like the defense will find 1 success. They have a greater chance of finding it if they have 9 opportunities than 5. And if you have the read option stuff, I know they don't have that with Cousins. That's why it's all the numbers game. And the game has moved towards creating space and running on lighter boxes.
I agree.
It's why the Cowboys thing makes no sense, because they load the box and they still suck.
Yeah.
This is one where I go, why would you want a formation where now 9 defensive linemen are lined up, 9 of them, and you have the lead blocker back there, and you have Cousins. So you've already made this on the D-line 9 on 8. You're already losing. And then you have Bolton as a free runner and expecting Tyler Algier to just go get him. If you're going to run the ball, just do it within some normal scope of your offense. I know we're getting worked up over one play.
No. But obviously this is the play that made the game. So I don't hate your argument there. I think my point was I don't think it mattered what the Falcons were going to call.
Well, Spags was just going to win the battle.
Because he was going to win the battle. And that goes back to
and that may have been the case.
Story.
I would just rather them do something to their actual strength and something that's a foundational piece of their offense.
But the Chiefs, just going back to, okay, they keep winning these close games, all this kind of stuff. They have had, for the most part, the same defensive players and the same defensive coordinator for 3 straight years now. And what I was saying is Jeff Schwartz responded to my tweet about this. He said, like, they've seen it all.
Yeah.
They've seen it all in the regular season. They've seen it all in the preseason. They've seen it all in the playoffs. They've seen it all in the Super Bowl. This whole defense, they know every situation. They know who needs to make a play where. They know how they need to make it. And they know, most importantly, the effort level that it takes to be great. And a great thing about Steve Spagnuolo isn't just the fact that he's a masterful defensive coordinator with his game plan. People love to play for him. They understand the level of intensity that they have to play at the biggest moments to be champions. And there is something to that. And I think that's Kansas City's defense to me. So I originally, with my stat that told the story, or I wanted to bring this up, I also didn't love the play. I really didn't. But the more I sort of watched it, the more I was almost like,
your stat is
I don't know if any play would have worked there.
Your stat is 4 Super Bowl appearances and 6 AFC title game appearances.
Essentially,
that's your stat.
Yeah, that's what it should have been.
You know,
it would have made a better graphic if I would have been able to put that there.
I mean, that's really what it is. And you're right. You're absolutely right about, like, Spagnuolo and Reed, and that's just the level of preparation and execution the Chiefs go at. I just, again, and that those 2 plays are a microcosm of the whole game. Because, again, the Falcons' 3rd and 4th down, they just didn't get it done. And I know there's a controversial PI or non-PI call, whatever, but they just didn't get it done when it mattered.
Oh, that was PI. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Most impressive is Nick Bolton. Obviously, again, a big player that has been around this organization who made the play because he knew it was up to him. Right? They're loading. They're loading the left side, their left side of the line of scrimmage, defense's right side of the line of scrimmage, and Nick Bolton knew, I have to shoot this gap, because if I let this guy get to the outside, because that was people go, how is Bolton so unblocked when Algier was there? And
beat him to it. He beat him to the spot.
I don't think he necessarily beat him to the spot. I think what it was is when you watch Algier, he is so confidently running to the outside. That's supposed to be a sweep play, because there's no hesitation with Bijan when he gets to that point to cut like up the gap where Bolton was. There's no hesitation for him there. He's still running straight. Bolton just undercut it so damn well, which numbers up in that situation, like you mentioned, goes into it. But Bolton knew, if I don't undercut this here,
they could turn the corner.
I will not beat him to the corner.
Yeah.
It's Bijan Robinson. I'm not going to beat him to the corner, and they're going to have a lead blocker out there. If I don't undercut him, this game's probably over. And, well, maybe not to that extreme because they were still up by a touchdown, but you guys know what I mean. And Bolton made the play where, like I said, I don't even know if I really blame it on Algier because I don't think he was ever even looking that direction. I think it was always supposed to be an outside run. And Bolton just made a hell of a play, one of the best plays that we've seen through this young season. I mentioned my most disappointing already. You got anything else on this game?
Yeah, I'll go both sides of that. I think this is going to sound crazy. Chiefs fans might not like this. They might be 0-3 without Rashee Rice. Travis Kelce's off to an awfully slow start.
He is very, very important.
Rice is carrying their offense right now. 12 catches, 110 yards. He's fourth in the NFL in receiving grade, and he's first in yards after catch. I actually don't know where they would be without Rashee Rice because Mahomes has not played all that well the last 2 weeks.
No.
The turnover-worthy, I think he's got 6 turnover-worthy plays in 3 games. I mean that, and I know their defense is really good, and they always find ways to win. I'm not sure they would have a win, and they're 3-0 right now. I'm not sure they would have a win without Rashee Rice. He's been the dominant player. He has been the dominant player other than maybe Chris Jones and their interior offensive line. He's been the dominant player on this team. And then my most disappointing, real quick, the Falcons just, I know they got Matt Judon. The pass rush is just not there. They're last in the NFL in pass rush grade. They have 3 sacks in 3 games. They're last in pass rush win rate. If they don't find a pass rush, this is playing quarterbacks like this is going to be a problem a lot of weeks because they just need more from their front 4. Raheem Morris is not a big blitzer. That's not usually their style. He likes to mess with coverages and send 4, maybe 5. He started sending 5 with the Rams to create matchups, but they need to find a pass rush in games like this.
It was an issue going into the year, and it's sort of manifesting itself here. Last game we're talking about is Thursday Night Football game. It's Patriots at the Jets. We knew we couldn't leave this one out for you. Jets win this game 24-3, a dominant win here for New York. The top 5 graded players for the New York Jets here in this game. Quinnen Williams at the top of the list with an 89.5. Running back Braylon Allen, the rookie, with an 87.7. Center Joe Tippmann with an 85.1. Cornerback Sauce Gardner with an 82.6. And then safety Chuck Clark rounding out the top 5 with a 77.2. Aaron Rodgers would have been in that top 5, 82.1 overall grade in this one. Flipping over to New England side of things, edge rusher Josh Uche makes the top of the list with an 82.8. Edge rusher Keon White with a 79.9. Safety Jabril Prepper 77.8. Offensive tackle Mike Onwenu with a 74.4. Tight end Austin Hooper with a 72.8. And number 5, and then Jacoby Brissett with a 60.5, although we did see a little bit of Drake May in this game as well. Stat that told the story here for your New York Jets here, Dalton.
You want some trivia?
I would love some trivia to end the show.
Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
No turnover-worthy plays.
All right.
Okay, that's Aaron Rodgers. That's what he does.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
He's played for the New York Jets. We're not counting last year. 3 regular season games.
Okay.
All 3 0 turnover-worthy plays. 3 consecutive games with no turnover-worthy plays in the regular season.
Love that.
How many other times since PFF has existed has that happened for the Jets?
Like first 3 weeks of the season?
Any 3 weeks of the season. Any 3 consecutive regular season weeks. How many other times have the Jets done that?
Since 2006.
Since 2006. That's a long time.
5, 4, 0.
0.
God.
It is the first time.
I was hoping it wasn't 0.
It is the first time in Jets history since 2006 that they've gone 3 straight games without a turnover-worthy play in the regular season. The one time they did it included playoff game. It was, remember the Curtis Painter game?
No.
Okay. Oh, get up on Jets history.
I was going to say, you act like that game's got lore behind it.
It has major. We wouldn't have made the playoffs without it. Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, right. Jets fans know the Curtis Painter game. It was so the only other time it's been done at all, okay, was Mark Sanchez's rookie year.
Okay.
Week 16, they played the Colts, and they were losing, and the Colts were like sealed into the 1 seed, and Curtis Painter, they brought him in and then gave away the game to the Jets. They just gave it to him, and then they played the Bengals twice in a row. It was the last game at Giants Stadium. MetLife wasn't even up yet. And then the next week against the Bengals, and the fun part of those 3 games, Sanchez had 55 dropbacks in those 3 games. Okay? Mm-hmm. Aaron Rodgers has twice that. He's at 109. So that's the only time, but it's never.
So what you're saying is Aaron Rodgers is the best Jets QB since in the PFF era.
Yes. He is already through 3 games. Yeah, no, he is. That's. I don't even think it's a question. Actually, I would take these 3 games of Aaron Rodgers over the last 20 years of the. I was looking through for this because it just sounded like something it would be for the Jets. Oh, 3 straight regular season games. Let's see how often this happens. Oh, never. Never. I was going through games. Trevor, I found games where Jet quarterbacks committed 9 turnover-worthy plays. 9. Like this is when I tell you. Jet fans, like they were.
I'm happy for you. I really am.
No, we don't even know what to do with ourselves. It doesn't even feel right.
Just saying, I'm happy for you.
I'm just telling you, that's the first time ever. All they needed for the rest of this talent on this team was someone to go in there and be competent, and that's what Aaron Rodgers. He's been highly competent, but they're not even executing at like a full rate yet. They're executing. This game should have been like 41-0 if they had actually executed on offense, especially with Garrett Wilson the way that they could have.
Yeah.
But this game shows me at home against a team that they're better than in New England, right? Where this talented a team with a competent quarterback, this could go far. Because right now the Jets offensively, even in the Niner game when they only had the ball for 19 minutes, they looked good on offense. They just never had the football. If Rodgers plays like this, and I think for us right now he's fourth in overall grade, I think, among quarterbacks. I think he's 4th. If he's the 4th best quarterback in football, the Jets have a wicked ceiling because their defense was dominant in this game too. The most impressive, like obviously it sounds like I could go Rodgers, but I'll go Quinnen Williams, also dominant in this game. Didn't do much the first 2 games. 89.5 overall, 5 pressures. This is the Quinnen Williams you want, and you notice in that top 5, those are some of the Jets' best players, right? Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner.
Yeah, it's important.
These are the guys. Your best players have to play well. Right. And maybe they're just a team, the same thing, they kind of struggle-ish in run defense early on. Maybe they're just a team that has to get ahead early and use the pass rush. Will McDonald's off to a good start. I know the Reddick situation is what it is. If you have Will McDonald and younger guys like Leonard Taylor playing well, then fine. We're a pass defense. Cool. The Cowboys have done it the last 3 years and won 12 games each year. Mm-hmm. But Aaron Rodgers playing like this, and again, just competent. They're not even doing the fun, flashy stuff yet and hitting deep shots to Garrett Wilson and all of that. He's, again, like we talked about with Stafford and some other Andy Dalton veteran guys, he doesn't miss anything. You talk about
No. He's got. I said this on Thursday night. It looks like he's got the answers to the test while he's taking the test.
He does. The level of processing, he doesn't miss.
That ball comes out immediately.
If you're talking about a coverage rotation, a false step, just leverage, pre-snap leverage from a corner or somebody like that, he doesn't miss a thing. Mm-hmm. And if it's going to continue to look like it's looked the last 6 quarters or so that he's played, it's actually the Jet offense that's going to be the story more than their defense.
So I'll run through my 3 really quickly. Stat that told the story for me is the Patriots offensive line. You mentioned Quinnen Williams and how good this Jets defense played. Patriots offensive line, was not good enough. Bladen Robinson, the rookie, 40.8 overall blocking grade. Caden Wallace, a 45.1. David Andrews, the veteran, even him, 46.5. Mike Onwenu was the only starting offensive lineman with an overall blocking grade above 63. Anytime that's the case, it's just going to be tough to win. It doesn't matter who's quarterback. Jacoby Brissett, Drake May, it just doesn't matter at that point. So the offensive line has to play better for this Patriots team if they're going to continue to play well this season. Obviously, I think it was a pleasant start for them, but they need that offensive line to get fixed because, first and foremost, they've got to go to Drake May eventually. And you can only go to Drake May eventually if you don't think he's going to get killed back there.
That showed, and even that one drive showed why he shouldn't play at all.
Right. Yeah. So they got to figure that out. That's, to me, the main get-right point for the Patriots as the season goes on. You got to get good enough up front to be able to play Drake May at some point. My most impressive, the rookie running back Braylon Allen. He played great. 90.4 rushing grade, 2 first downs, 3 forced missed tackles, 3.7 yards after contact. He showed everything that you really want. Breece Hall, this offense is always going to run through Breece Hall and what he could do on the ground, also in the passing game like we saw the week before. But Braylon Allen being a great spell back for them is really important because you don't want Breece Hall to just be this absolute lion's share workhorse back. You don't have to when you have a player like this. And I think that's going to be really important for them moving forward.
Allen's leading the league in rushing grade right now.
He was very, very efficient on Thursday, so I'm not surprised at that, especially after having an elite rushing grade.
And these sets that they get in with both of them on the field, these pony sets, or sometimes with Breece Hall out wide and Allen in the backfield, it's going to get dangerous because Hall is a dynamite receiver. The more they can move him around, the better. And putting both of them on the field, I really like what they're doing when they're both out there and they're both rushing threats, or one's a receiving threat and the other's a rushing threat. We've seen both of them do things in both rushing and receiving. I think it's a real mismatch problem for some of these defenses across from when you have both on the field.
Most disappointing for me was Christian Gonzalez. 10 targets, 5 catches allowed, 3 first downs, a touchdown on him, 0 forced incompletions. Just could have been a better day for Gonzalez. And it's an up and down position, I understand, but you're one of the best in the NFL, so I'm always going to have a high bar for you. And I thought that he could have played better last Thursday.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the traditional numbers could have been a lot worse had they hit, because he was, for the most part, shadowing Garrett Wilson. That could have been a lot worse on the traditional stat line for Gonzalez. It was a rough night for him.
Whew, there we go. A little bit longer of a show, a little bit longer of a podcast here with this one, but there was a lot to get into in week 3. Like we said at the top of the show, you have the week 1 overreactions, you have the week 2 sort of adjustment. You never know what week 3 is going to be. In the NFL, it's the greatest reality TV show of all time. It always gives us something to talk about. If you guys enjoyed the premium stats and some of the data that we've been talking about throughout the last almost 3 hours of this show, you can have that as well. Go get yourself a premium PFF Plus subscription over at PFF.com. That's the way to be able to do it. You can see all the premium stats, all those data points, everything to be able to, spout those off whenever you're talking to your friends or managing your fantasy team or just hoping that your team plays better. You want reasons why? Well, if you have a PFF Plus subscription, you can figure that out. For Trevor Sikkema, for Dalton Wasserman, thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the PFF NFL show. We're going to be back over the next couple of days once again, getting into the trenches, getting into the QB plays, highlighting some rookies. So make sure you look out for that stuff. But we'll see you guys next week.